this work session on December 6, 2023 to order. Ms. Tanner, please call the roll.
Basine.
Here.
Buffalo.
Here.
Clanton.
Present.
Gabriel.
Present.
Jordan.
Here.
Martin.
Present. Okay, we're going to begin with our first,
Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Stone.
Present.
Looking at my sheet. Welcome. Welcome.
First week, we gotta send you back.
Didn't make it 90 days.
welcome to your first work session.
Thank you.
All right, so first on our item, we have board development, school board's goals, superintendent's interim goals, number 5.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Hello.
So this afternoon, I'd just like to walk through Goal 5, as was uploaded in board docs for you guys. So the revised Goal 5 that the board presented on October 18th was that the percentage of NPS graduates receiving advanced studies diplomas will meet or exceed the state average by the end of the 26-27 school year, or the graduating class of 2027. So the class of 23 data was the NPS average was 35.3%, and the state average was 51.5%. Is that better? Can I speak again? Someone was already upset by what I was saying. So for some data points, the first table you see there is trend data over the past 5 years with the NPS average and the state's average. And as you can see there, the state's average even is a moving target. And we pretty much followed the movement of the state with the average. Where they increased, we saw some increases, and when they decreased, we saw some decreases as well. And so that's where we based some of our data and our numbers off of. And the next table would be setting our annual targets. And the line here that I want to pay attention to is the bottom line, which is the gap, because as the goal reads that we want to have a 0% gap, or actually a negative gap would be even better, where Norfolk exceeds the state average. But to get to that 0% gap is ultimately our goal to start with. We do have a ways to go to get there. So looking at our average of 35.3%, the target for this year we'd want to stay stable, just because our seniors are already in classes and their diplomas are pretty much set at this point, because as you guys are aware, the Advanced Studies Diploma is based off a set of specific courses that you're successful with and credits that you receive when you graduate. So you'll see it would be gradual growth for us in Norfolk to get to the 51.5% that the state has currently. In order to make that, because we would have to grow that over time, really with our current 9th grade class. Our cohort 2027 right now is what we'd be focusing on to grow this target the most. And that should show true in the interim measures that were developed. So looking at the first interim measure, we look at 50% of the 2027 graduating cohort would successfully complete the appropriate courses to be on track to graduate with an advanced studies diploma by the end of the 23-24 school year. So our goal this year would be for our current freshmen to have half of the students, 50% of them, on track as they leave the class. And then we can continue to grow that target as we go to hit that 51.5% target, because this would be the focus group right here of students. And under the table, you'll see each quarter will look at success in specific classes that they need. So the data in this table includes students that are passing either their first credit-bearing math course or higher. So if they're taking Algebra 1 for the first time as a 9th grader, that would be the course. Or if they've already taken Algebra 1 already, then they'd be on track. So we'd be successful in there. Or their first English course. All of them have to take English 9 in 9th grade, so that would be there. The first high school health and PE course, the first or higher science credit-bearing course, first or higher foreign language course, and the first or higher history course, as well as their first elective course. If students in 9th grade successfully complete those courses, we would consider them on track to be receiving an advanced studies diploma. And then the next two tables are very similar, except for they go up the levels of graduating cohorts. So 2026 graduating cohorts, or our current sophomore class, you'll see our target here is to have them die 40% by the end of this year. And for those students, they'd have to be passing their second or higher math course, their second English course, their second health or PE course, first or higher foreign language course, because you have to have three to go in that direction for the advanced studies diploma. So we'd want to make sure by the end of their sophomore year, they've completed their first one. Second or higher science course, because you have to have four science courses. Second or higher history course, because you have to have four. By the end of sophomore year, we'd be looking for them to finish economics and personal finance, and their first or higher elective course as well. And then the next graduating cohort that we look at is 2025, which are our current juniors. And you'll see the data there is to get them to 34% by the end of this year, so that we can work to make sure they're on target to grow more even their senior year. And the data there shows the students passing third or higher math course, third English course, third or second or higher language course, third or higher science course, and third or higher history course, completion of an economics and personal finance, and first or higher elective course as well for these students. And the data that is the actual data, that's the percentage of students at the end of first quarter that were on track for what was listed under the table. I'll pause there for questions or comments.
Yeah. So just to maybe back up a little bit from the board's perspective. So, as a board, we decided we wanted to focus on student outcomes, and that we would try to monitor the interim measures towards the goals that we agreed upon. And basically, the interim goals are important in three ways. Behavior in the boardroom is echoed in the classroom. So the trickle-down effect regarding the important focus of the organization. What gets measured gets done. If I'm accountable for results, I will focus on getting results. And it helps us identify which adult behaviors are improving student outcome goals and which are not. And so really from a board's perspective, what we need to be able to have a conversation with Dr. Birdsong and the team is, the interim goals should be predictive of the ultimate goals that we have established. And then ultimately, the strategies should align. So if we find that we're way ahead, then, what strategy? Find that we're way behind, what do we do? And so I think part of what we need predictive piece. Because I don't really see here in the and we're in the cycle that we're currently in, and maybe I've missed it and you'll get to it, what we would, as a board, be monitoring on a quarterly basis or every 2-month basis. In essence, what we're doing is score. We want to know, basketball, football, tennis, whatever it is. Ultimately, the name of the game is to win. And this provides the board to have a conversation amongst ourselves with the superintendent about, are we on track? What supports do we need to do? And again, are we predictive and aligned? So I just wanted to reemphasize that, because I think that's something that we need to talk about and to get clear on whether or not we understand how the accomplishment of the interim measures will lead to the accomplishment of the overall goal over the period of time that we have identified.
Ms. Tanner, would you scroll down just a little bit to the next table? There we go. So the three tables that are similar to that would be, we'd reset those each year. So this one is the cohort 2027 class, and we'd be tracking them through each year until they are the graduating class. So this table here is really the key table that we, and we're we're confident that if we have 50% of our freshman class on track by the end of this year to have an advanced studies diploma, that with the correct counseling at the school level, ensuring their world language, a foreign language is really the stepping stone where a lot of our students don't make the advanced studies cut. They don't get the 3 years of a world language in a lot of the times, or they don't get that fourth science in, or the fourth history in to get that level. So making sure at the scheduling time of now for next year that the students are scheduling those courses in, then we would track them again through next year in a similar type table to say, quarter we're looking to see specifically, are they successful in the classes that they're taking to get to the advanced studies level of diploma? And if they're not successful in those courses, what are we making sure that we're doing at the school level to make sure they have the supports in place to be successful in the classes, or to do the proper academic and career planning to make sure that they are signing up and taking the classes to have the advanced studies diploma?
Go ahead, Ms. Basine.
Well, first I want to be sure that you were done with it. So if you wouldn't mind, like, walking through this table. So looking quarter to quarter, because, that's with the interim measure, the purpose of it is to be able to monitor it over time throughout the year. So the factors, what are the factors that would, or that you find often impede a student's ability to move from quarter to quarter? Like, that would change those percentages from quarter one
Sure.
through quarter four? Like, what
Passing or not passing the courses. So
Passing,
as you know,
okay.
in ninth
All right.
grade, we have our highest retention rate is in ninth grade.
Right.
So ninth grade specifically is where we really would focus on, what are we doing to support those students in their courses to be successful? In each quarter, what we're monitoring, are they not only enrolled in, but are they passing their class? Complete them, because again, if they complete the courses that are listed on the bottom of the table, they're well on track to make an advanced study. And then each year, it's just more courses under their belt, basically, and each quarter, it's successfully passing those courses.
So one suggestion might be for our benefit, and so that we have a shared understanding, is maybe to define what on track is and what is off track. On track might be passing, X number of courses. So that way we're also defining, for us and for anyone who is also monitoring us and our work, is to define, what the requirements of the advanced studies diploma is, because, that's different from, as you already articulated, and then defining what's on track and what's not on track, so that we know exactly how that's being defined and what triggers what factors impact the outcomes that we see quarter to quarter. And so I think that would be helpful for us, especially as we.
So I apologize. It does. I just.
I can try to.
That's what I was trying to articulate under the table. So the on-track data includes students passing their first or higher math course, first English course, first health and PE course, first or higher science course, first or higher foreign language course, first or higher history course, and first elective course.
Okay, that makes sense.
And that's under each table, and so the next one is going to be second, then the next one will be third, so it grows into it.
Okay, appreciate it.
And I'm also happy to add, as an ancillary document, the table from the VDOE on what advanced studies is.
Right.
We can add that just at the end for an informational chart.
Yeah, I personally think it would be helpful.
That's
I know
fine.
I was going back.
Well, I
and
brought the
forth
cheat sheet with
to
me, so
the-
it is helpful to have, because I
Yeah,
did
I
bring
was
it
going
with
back
me.
to the website just to kind of see, okay,
Yeah.
quarter to quarter, what are the things that could change, for a student? And so I think for anyone monitoring it, so that they don't have to flip through the websites and through, different things, like, I
Absolutely.
think it'd be helpful to have it in one place.
Good news is, once a child gets off track, we can get them back on track.
Right.
Go ahead, Ms. Stone.
So just to clarify for myself, when we're talking about what's not on track, are those just the students that are not passing those courses, but they're enrolled? Or are we also including in that number students who are not enrolled in them at all?
Correct. So not passing in, if they're enrolled in all of them and not passing even one of them, then they're off track. Or if they aren't enrolled, they're off track.
So this is a full student body look when we're looking at percentages? Okay.
Oh, Dr. Martin, so to that point, do you think it would be useful, so since this is our, our monitoring, I wonder too, because it is the student body, to distinguish those that are, I guess, because we know who those students are who are, I guess, who have plans to receive an advanced diploma, is that right? Or not necessarily?
So we know basically, based off of if they come into high school, leaving middle school, say, I want an advanced studies diploma, then yes, it's marked that they want one. And this will keep us more focused on making sure that we're driving towards that with each and every single student.
Wanted to distinguish, those that are on track as being those that are on a plan for that diploma versus those who are not on a plan for that diploma.
We'd prefer,
But that's,
to
yeah,
have
but we
as
want to
many as we
have that
can
as
on that
many as
plan.
we can, right,
Correct.
because that's the whole point of
Because
this
it opens
goal,
up
right?
opportunity.
Right. I'm just thinking it through when, after, just hearing her comment. So, anyway, thank you.
I have a question. In terms of raw numbers, what's the total number of students that we're talking about in terms of on track and not on track?
Oh, I don't have the raw numbers with me, Mr. Jordan, but, we have about, 2,400 students per grade level. So it'd be 44% of the 20, it's 44% of the whole 2027 cohort. So 44.8% of all of our ninth graders right now is what the number would be. I just don't have that data right in front of me. I apologize.
If the data that includes student passing is actually the predictive measure of how the students are doing, should we have some way of, I think you mentioned different strategies with counseling and so on and so forth. So what is or what are the biggest factors or strategies or actions that will push the students to achieve the targets that we have here?
So it comes in, I think there's two things. One, it's making sure that we're advocating and pushing our students, and we do that. We've been revamping our academic and career planning process for the past couple of years now to start including parents in the process more heavily as well. The other part is just ensuring that the students have the follow-through with it. Sometimes when we get to senior year, there might be a course where a student's like, I don't need to graduate. I'm going to graduate. I'm going to go to college. I don't need the advanced studies diploma, and that one class could do it for them. And if that's, we'll do our best, to support and do everything we can. But ultimately, if the student can still go to the university or college of their choice and they don't need the advanced studies, there's not a lot we can do to push if they're like, I'm just not going to take that fourth science course anymore. I just don't need it. It's tantamount to like in AP government a lot of the times we have students who don't take an AP government exam because they just don't get the credit for it in college. So they're like, why am I going to take it if I don't need to take it? That's the battle we face sometimes. So it's more of just, the important thing is making sure our 9th and 10th graders are on track for it so the door's still open. If by the end of 10th grade we have students who haven't taken a foreign language course, their door's closing unless we have outside opportunity for them to take it because they need 3 credits of a foreign language. So those are the things. What can't they do in 2 years to make sure they've done in 9th and 10th grade year? And that's where our focus really is driving, which is why we really have to focus on our current 9th and 10th graders.
Yeah, I would think we would want to find a way of monitoring whatever those high impact strategies are. So if we, for example, know that some number of the students are not on the foreign language courses that you talked about, then in this quarter, we know who they are, how many they are. In the second quarter, we can see if whatever actions took place that may have, and I don't know how much adjusting can happen mid-year anyway.
The planning for next year, though, which is what's important. So, once we start the scheduling for next year, every ninth grader currently who hasn't taken a foreign language course, the goal is to get them to enroll in one their sophomore year. Because if not, we already know they've closed the door. So that's really, when we talk about this and we start talking about it internally, that's really the biggest gatekeeper is foreign language. So making sure they have that opportunity and they take that opportunity by sophomore year to get there and growing that program even more, which then comes down to finding more teachers.
Yeah, so I would think that whether it's in addition to this or not, that those type of gatekeeper coursework and performance in those courses is really what we would be monitoring to see whether or not students are on track or not. Because you could enroll in all the courses and not perform.
Right,
So enrollment in and of itself doesn't put you on track.
right.
The performance puts you on track. And then if we do have the scenario, if as you said, foreign language is the gatekeeper, then what we would be able to monitor throughout the year is, I don't know, whether it's how many folks, ninth graders you see are on that, and maybe it follows the cohort each year, but I don't think that just the percent gives us any real predictive data on whether or not we are on track or not.
I would push back respectfully on that a little bit, Mr. Jordan, because the percentage of they have to be passing everything that's listed under there in order to get towards an advanced studies diploma. And as a ninth grader, if they've successfully passed all those courses, they're on track. And those that aren't on track are the ones that we need to focus on.
Yeah, but if you have 5 courses and 4 of them are there and 1 of them there aren't, that might also give an indication of what strategies may need to take place.
Right.
So I'm talking about it from the board's monitoring perspective, not from
Right.
what you all are doing internally, but what we see to determine whether or not the students are on track or not.
So since we're having a work session dialogue, so if I can respond to Mr. Jordan's comment. So I was originally kind of struggling with this at first too, because I was thinking, okay, for me, like, is this predicting, what's the predictive value of these interim measures to the overarching goal? And I was going back to the requirements and thinking, okay, what are because the whole point of this originally was to get at college readiness, right? And so thinking about what research shows are the gateway courses. We're talking about world language, biology, algebra 1. And then I was thinking, if you pull out one course and say we're going to monitor this as an interim, you could be missing, like you said, another course. So I was thinking, well, as I was trying to say, well, I was doing exactly what we're doing here, but just being my own devil's advocate and trying to think through it. And you really do have to say you have to be passing all of those, or 3 out of the exactly what the requirements say they have to be. So you almost have to have it almost has to be this, or we as a board have to say, do we have the right goal? So that's kind of where I came back to is it either has to be this, because I was like, coming back to this. And so I kind of left with, I think the board needs to think about, do we have the right goal 5? Because, and for Nichelle's, or for Ms. Stone's, benefit, we started off with, when we were doing, as we were doing this work, we were trying to get at the college and career readiness indicator. And not just have just college focus, but what we are lacking here is the college and career focus, right? So we're missing the career focus piece, but that's a whole other conversation. But we tried to come up with something that got us more information about what students know and can be able and can do versus just whether they're enrolled in a class. So this was our attempt at college readiness anyway. And so we came up with this. But as I was going through, and as we're talking through this, it's almost like you have to have these interim measures, or we as a board have to consider, do we have the right goal 5? Is it getting us what we want? Or one of the things we talked about the last time we talked about this was, do we pause and consider working on the right goal 5? Like, do we, for this year, so that the administration can, do its work? We have goal 1 through 4. We move forward with that, or do we've adopted this goal and we continue with this goal, and as we do our planning work for the upcoming year, we modify. And so those are just some questions that I personally have that I'm bringing, to all of you, is do we have the right goal here? And I think that's kind of the
Go ahead, Mr.
the
Clinton.
question.
And I'm glad that you posed that, because I was sitting here going, okay, where's the career and technical piece? Because everybody knows
Right.
that's my
We're missing that.
thing that I'm really, because every child is not going to
Going to
college.
college.
Right.
And I don't want, from a board level, to send the wrong message, that yes, it is admirable to push higher education, but the reality is that there are careers that don't require an advanced study degree or beyond, 2 years maybe. And as we're looking at this, when I'll plan it again, get into this educational planning discussion about what Norfolk Public Schools looks like, we saw a great example this morning. And I see back to Ms. Goshen in the respect of students in aviation, that we're dual enrollment while they're in school, being able to get certifications, stick to something, and be certified and be able to go in. So not having that present here, to me, totally discounts all of those students and those opportunities that are there. When the state's goal really talks about career, technical, and advanced studies. So I don't want to belabor this, because I do believe that we've given a lot for the superintendent and team to move forward. I do like the idea of that maybe we need to continue to reassess this, and honestly, as we continue with our conversations that we should be having in the next couple months, that this will really be a focal point, because if we think about how Norfolk Public Schools looks and what the end game is, we want to make sure that students leave out of our doors prepared, 2 4-year college, military service, entrepreneurship, career. And if we talk about that in a holistic way as a board, that kind of can help us in this framing of our conversation for the year, and that we can get to this particular point. I think that it's a good framework, and I appreciate all the work that's there, but I do believe that it is missing a portion of our population, because, you've heard me say it before, I don't want any student to be what I consider gym pop. I want every student to have a focused, and that we provided it to them, so that when they walk outside those doors, that they are ready for life, career, and success. And so I like the idea of continuing the conversation, and so that's my 2 cents.
That was mentioned, I'll just grab my moment. I appreciate the clarification, and to Carlos's point, it's good to keep it as an iterative process and continue thinking about these things, so I love that we're having the conversation. But, we're just starting to ask this information of the superintendent and the schools, and so keeping that in mind, just as long as we're not changing the goals every other month and changing it, so we're changing targets for them, because that adds other things on top of the own things that they have to process. So we don't want to belabor it or add too much, and think about them very clearly. And these are definitely conversations, like, is this telling us what we want want us to tell us. And just being mindful that what we're asking is asking something of the schools to provide it to us. And so as long as we're being very clear about what it is we're trying to target, and sometimes it takes time to see whether that target is working. So, but a lot of work went into these, and so seeing how they serve, and I appreciate everything's gone into preparing these for us, so thank you for that, and clarifying my questions, and I'm sure I'll have more as I figure out what these numbers do for me, but, thank you.
Just
ahead, Rodney.
to Mr. Clanton's point, I don't think we can or should look at either or. So students receiving an advanced diploma and also receiving their various CTE credentials, which I believe is part of the system anyway, we can do both. Whether or not both should show up in the goal, I don't know, but we picked something. And so when you look at the data around advanced diplomas, and if we were able to see some of the data on a line chart across time, so last year, 26% of economically disadvantaged students in Norfolk received an advanced diploma. So our economic disadvantaged population is what, 60, 70%? So that is a significant students that could see here as a interim measure, because if the economically disadvantaged students, or if the African American students, or any of the other groups who are on the negative side of the gap, having a focus on those students might be something that we could monitor. So I don't want to tell you what to do, because it's not my role. I don't want to say the strategy, but I think that I just think that part of what we're, well, at least I'm struggling with, is just seeing the percentages and not seeing the strategies behind it. I mean, you're telling us about the strategy, but it's not on the chart. It's not something that the board can monitor. You can come and tell us about it, but it's not something that, if we were looking on the scoreboard, we could see how somebody is doing. You know, look in the newspaper and you can see who's average what in rebounds, scores, assists. There's information that one can see as part of keeping score. So I still think as a board we need to have a conversation around whether or not these interim goals really give us the predictive alignment that we're seeking. How do we know it?
And I just wanted to add on that one, like, strategy in itself is administration. However, ensuring that you have the appropriate resources to execute those strategies is what we've got to do here at the board level. And I guess that's also, you know, and I'm not going to speak for you, Mr. Jordan, but I think that's what I'm hearing in that respect of, if we can see clearly at a board level what those strategies are, it would enable us as board members, when it comes time around budget, to be in alignment to see we need to move X resources, not only to help execute that strategy, but also to support the equity component of it, those particular populations. So when I hear that elevate, it's so that we can clearly understand it, not in through the numbers, but we can clearly understand at a board level and articulate it that, hey, this is working or this isn't working. And if we want to make sure that, you know, even if you started, I think we had Lindenwood had an example of something that you were doing this year. And if that pilot worked well, then we could come back the next year with a recommendation to increase it, because we've got the data to show that that's helping and supporting. So that's what when I hear Mr. Jordan say elevated, that's what I'm taking out of it. I don't know if that's what you mean, Mr. Jordan, but that's what I'm kind of taking out of that. All right.
And I'll just make one last comment for now on this. I feel that, for me, I agree, it's an and conversation, and this morning, Mr. Clinton and I, we talked about this a lot. It's an and conversation, I feel very strongly about that. It's not an or, and if you look at our data, we're below the state, we've got to exceed that. But I guess where I stand is, I feel like we should keep this where it is. And I believe that where the strategies come in place is really when we're doing our monitoring reports, and we're talking about what's working well, what's not working well, what are the next steps. When we work and practice through what those monitoring reports look like and how we discuss and move through the reports, I think that's really where we learn more about the strategies and the impact those strategies are having on moving the needle quarter to quarter. And then that will tell us exactly budget implications, policy implications, and all of that. And I think that's what we're looking for. And, I can't speak for Mr. Jordan, but I think that's what I personally would want to see, and I think that would be appropriate for the board.
Thank you, it's a very good discussion. Let's move on to our superintendent's non-negotiables.
All right. So the non-negotiables that were presented to us for some work, again, I'll review through those with the progress measures that have been put in place. The first non-negotiable is the superintendent will not allow curriculum instruction that's not aligned to the standards, inclusive, challenging, culturally and linguistically responsive, and differentiated to meet the academic needs of every student. So there are two progress measures that we've put in place for those. The first is the percentage of teachers receiving instructional classroom feedback from a building level administrator once every 2 weeks will increase to 100% by the end of the 26-27 school year. And that data would be measured through exactly what it says, teachers getting observed more frequently, and it would be a less timely observation. So it wouldn't necessarily be a 60 or 90-minute observation, but a 5 to 10-minute observation with instructional feedback more frequently, so that everybody's aware of what's going on in the classroom, that it's aligned and meeting the needs of this non-negotiable. Progress measure 1.2 is directly from the strategic plan, where we make sure that our employees are receiving professional development activities that support them in their current roles. That level was 82.1% during the 22-23 school year, and we want to get that to 95% by the 26-27 school year. In order to measure that, every time a teacher participates in professional development that's offered through Norfolk Public Schools, in order to get their points awarded to them, they have to complete a survey at the end on the front line so that we can pull that data. So I'll pause after each one if that's easier, instead of going through all five.
Anyone have anything to say? Go ahead.
I had one question, and I think we might have covered that in our previous conversation because it's kind of a strategy question. So I'm knowing that every time we add a performance measure, it adds extra work for the people in the buildings doing the work. And granted, my understanding of what happens within that process is anecdotal. So I don't know what's happening for everyone. I just know personally what family members have experienced. But what strategies kind of go in place here, and how can we help? I guess it'll come up in budget season when we're talking about what do we need to help the administrators be able to get into those classrooms? Do we know what's really holding them back from being able to get in those classrooms? Do we have a finger on that? And what can we do to help in that way?
So I think what gets in the way a lot of times is day-to-day operations. A parent may come in and request to see an assistant principal or principal. There might have been a scuffle in the hallway. So many other things that go on that take administrators out of the classroom. So the focus this year was kind of redo how we look at observations and coaching. And Dr. Kimsey and her team did a wonderful job of really saying it's not only about those formal observations that take an hour, and then you have the pre and the post observation conferences, but it's about being in the classroom more frequently to make sure they're aligned. So changing that to be, if you can make it to 3 classrooms a day for 5 or 10 minutes, what will that change instructional practice like? And how will that make sure that we're more aligned? So that is the focus. I think the support from the board would be, continued support when it comes to either staffing requests or budget requests to make sure that we have the support in schools that we need. I think also the support to understand that sometimes if an email comes your way that says, I went into a school and they couldn't meet with me, knowing that we're asking our administrators to be in classrooms more often, and they may have to get back to a parent once in a while. But, those are the types of support that I think are most fundamental to make sure this shift that we're asking our administrators for, because it's also, it's hard to mindset and change to be out and about that frequently in the classroom and to be giving the feedback and having discussions with teachers. But research shows that's what changes instructional practice. So that's why the focus is there. Get it, Dr. Kimsey?
Go ahead,
And
Ms.
if I could-
Basine. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to add to that, and we provide a great deal of support for our building principals so that when they go out into the classrooms, they have the tools that they need to be successful. The administration actually developed a walkthrough tool in collaboration with the building principals so that it could be consistent across all schools. Whenever we're looking at data, we'd be able to put together some trend data. So if we're looking at science instruction, for example, and we find that we don't have the manipulatives that we need in science classrooms for hands-on activities and things of that nature, we have the data. But at the end of the day, it's the principal get in the classroom with the teachers to provide them immediate feedback on what they're doing for children. That's going to make the difference in our schools. It's all about the classroom. The classroom is where the rubber meets the road. And so the teachers need that support. They need to hear from their principals. They need that immediate feedback. And so it's our job to put things in place to support them through that process.
Go ahead.
Please. So for progress measure 1.1, I noticed that the actual data for school year 23-24, this school year is, because this is the baseline year?
Correct. It's our first year of implementing every teacher once every 2 weeks.
Okay, so this is a newer practice?
It is.
Okay. So, okay. So, and my next question is around, our evaluation tools, from the top down are now inclusive of culturally responsive instruction. And so that's a big piece of what we also say, as a board, that we want to ensure for our students in the curriculum. How are we ensuring that alignment is there in the curriculum right now?
So within the actual curriculum, when we have done our audits, and also whenever we write curriculum, we look for diversity of community members, and we look for how to be inclusive of all areas whenever like, let's just take English, for example, when we think of texts to read, and no longer is the day where it's the curriculum dictates that this one book will be read by all students at this same exact time. We implement more choice, and we implement more snippets of materials in there so that we're more inclusive. Just in the curriculum development itself, that's something that we do now.
Or like a rubric of sorts?
I don't know if we have a definitive rubric at this point for it, but, the past audits that we've done have, they've said, they've given us specific points where we could improve, but they've also noted some points where we're strong as well, as far as grade levels. Like, one of the things was high school reading literature, and so we've amended that. We could certainly look to build that in, but we've met with and Mr. Brady has met with the senior coordinators to really emphasize the work on being culturally competent and inclusive in our curriculum.
Tell them a little bit about the professional development. I think that'll be helpful in that
Yeah.
area.
So, and it's with the professional development plan this year, one of the things we really wanted to focus on was the cultural competency of our staff. So we have done professional development with our central office support staff that goes into buildings on cultural competency support and instructional support. And we're doing a train-the-trainer model right now where we're working with a select individual from each school that's doing a train-the-trainer module that will start rolling out at the school level during second semester. So they'll do sessions with teachers at the school as well, and then we'll continue to grow from that process each year to make it stronger.
So to me, the progress measures are, again, quantitative and not qualitative. So, Dr. Poe, when I heard you mention the audit, then if there are some things that you referenced that could need, maybe that's what we need to be monitoring. Because, so for example, in the first progress measures, it says the percentage of teachers receiving instructional classroom feedback. It doesn't say what the feedback is, what's the qualitative piece of the feedback, how it relates to, to the standards and linguistically responsive. So again, for me, I'm still trying to get a better understanding of how the every 2-week feedback aligns with the non-negotiable around curriculum and instruction and the alignment piece. How do we?
So I'd be happy to share that.
Okay.
So like Dr. Birdsong had mentioned, we've developed walkthrough tools that include many of the items. And once this is successfully accepted by the board, we're prepared to go through and add anything that's not included, like the linguistically responsive. That's not an item on there right now in the walkthrough form. But we do have cultural competencies on there. We do have differentiation on there. We do have that it's aligned on there. We do have that it's challenging on there. So, those items are on the walkthrough. So, administratively, those are items that we're focused on. And if we're in the classrooms and if teachers being observed once every 2 weeks, when administrators don't see stuff happening that should, that becomes a part of the conversation. Or if they do, then it becomes a part of the congratulations in the conversation. But as far as the non-negotiable goes, the more we're in classrooms to make sure that we're aligned, the more that we know that we're doing this and that we're meeting those needs.
Yeah, I hear you, but just my sense of it is being there is great. Having an understanding of what is being done while there that aligns with the non-negotiable, to me, is what I'm trying to follow. And even on with progress measure 1.2, increase the percentage of employees who indicate that professional development activities support them in their current roles. I mean, again, that's not very specific. So when we talk about SMART goals, something needs to be specific. And I don't know if there are particular professional development activities that would support this, that we would talk about and monitor. But again, I just think that we're doing quantitative measures, but not qualitative measures. From a board, you all know all this stuff and deal with it. What we're trying to be able to see at our level, written at a 6th grade level, is how students are doing. And so what activities are taking place and what strategies are taking place to support goals and the non-negotiables we have here. And just knowing that we have individuals who say that their professional development activity supported them in their current role. I mean, I don't.
So just in response to that, the more frequently that we're in the classrooms, the more frequently teachers are being given recommendations on improvement, and if the professional development isn't aligned with that, then it's not supporting them in their current roles. So, you know, when we were developing these as a team, we knew that we have to show improvement on being in the classroom and giving the feedback teachers need, and we need to show improvement in our professional development that teachers need. If we don't get there first, there's not going to be much else to monitor.
One last thing, in the school improvement plans, it seems as though what you all monitor and provide feedback to the state is much more specific than what we're seeing. Are there any measures or goals that relate to this non-negotiable that we could use as content or context to what we're trying to achieve here?
So I think this late in the game, Mr. Jordan, it wouldn't be fair to our principals to ask them to make sure there's something in their school improvement plan that aligns to this.
Oh, no, I'm not asking them to change that. I'm saying whatever they have in their school improvement plans that bubble up to central administration, that I gather eventually get reported to the state or whoever it is that's accountable. I'm not saying ask the principals to do something different. I'm asking, can you pull some of what you're doing within those school improvement plans that you're monitoring and reporting to the state and share some of that with the board as part of a progress measure?
I don't know that I can answer that at this point without having all the school improvement plans in front of me to be able to look at those, Mr. Jordan. There certainly are some that would rise to the level of this, but I wouldn't say that every single school improvement plan has something that would align directly with this non-negotiable.
Go ahead, Ms. Messina. Do you have something else?
Well, I was just going to piggyback on something Mr. Jordan said about, well, number one, with 1.1, you know, I know the division, we do, you know, to ensure that we're in alignment, the standards are in alignment with the curriculum. You know, there's a process that's in place, and I believe whatever that process is, there is a monitoring component, right? And so I think if I'm hearing Mr. Jordan correctly, I think looking for specific data points as part of that monitoring is what I think I'm hearing you asking if there are better, more objective measures to pull out from that. Is that?
I was just saying that since there exist these SMART goals, and then under each SMART goal is a action step, and there's a monitoring frequency, and you all know we receive these reports that give us a high-level overview of what's happening there with the essential actions. I'm just asking, as we are dealing with this particular non-negotiable, if there is already something in what the school system is already doing around these essential actions, then is there something that we can pull out of there that we can monitor that aligns with the non-negotiable?
So it seems like, are you asking, is there a better way of getting this information with a measure that we're already using?
In my opinion, it just doesn't tell us quality, it tells us quantity.
Right. So
I was just trying to get a better understanding that if in first quarter of 23-24, since the teams are already doing this monitoring of the classroom or whatever other things that they're doing, I gather that there's something that gets collected and reported back. So whether or not it ties directly with curriculum and cultural relevant and linguistically responsive, I don't know. But it just seems to me that to the extent that we have these significant number of schools that do have these plans, that there may be something in there that look at that would give us a better measure than how many times somebody goes to the classroom. We don't know what the feedback is. We don't know what the professional development activity
Mr.
is.
Jordan,
Right,
what I
so
would
you wanna
say
get
is
at
because we
quality.
have so much data we'll be looking at, that part of that qualitative would, information would be, feedback that we'd be getting from the data collected would be, are we passing SOLs? Like, are we meeting our trends? Are we meeting these goals?
We have that in another goal.
Yeah, so, I mean, that's what I was.
You're not getting
just
all that
saying,
information
is
from this
that
one measure.
Through this,
These are the conditions that we.
well, I mean, and I'm listening to Dr. Pohl in that respect. If we're doing our part and doing the observations, providing the feedback, the ultimate result is that the teacher is going to take that feedback back and make the adjustments in their instruction, and the outcome is that we're going to see
Scores
student
and
success.
increase,
Correct.
yeah.
So it may not necessarily be in this particular one, but we're measuring to ensure that we're doing what we said we were going to do, and then the other output of that one is somewhere else, are students accomplishing what they said, what they should be doing. And that's what I see in the connection there, not necessarily that we'll drill down so much in this one particular measurement, but that it will find it somewhere else.
And I think what I'm also hearing from Mr. Jordan, and correct me if I'm wrong, is, I think I heard you mention quality. You want to get at the quality of it, right? And as I reread or reread this non-negotiable, we also don't talk about the quality of it. So going back to that question, because that is what we're setting. If we're saying high quality, we have to define what that is, right? And that,
And have the experts help define
Help
what it is.
well, that's what I mean.
But I think on the
But we
adverse on it,
haven't,
that it's almost inherently built in, that if
It
you're
should
giving
be,
quality
right.
feedback, if you're providing quality feedback, and the instructor is taking that back and making the necessary adjustments, it's inherent in the respect that on the output is that student success is going to increase. So if we're not doing those things, I almost see that it's baked in there, it's there, the action is there, and the output is what we're going to see in student success. I don't know if we need to get so prescriptive in trying to pull it out there. I don't know if we'll get to that, but I see what you're saying, but I think that we can find it somewhere else, tie this in with another goal. But I don't know if drilling down so far is going to necessarily get what we want.
I'm just saying,
But I mean, I hear what you're saying, but
this
I'm
is
just
a
thinking that it might be somewhere else.
non-negotiable. It speaks to the values of the board based upon what we've heard from the community.
Correct.
And at the end of the day, it's trying to say that we value a curriculum that is inclusive, challenging, culturally and linguistically responsive. And so what I'm saying is that having it inherent doesn't allow us to measure it because, you are what you measure. So if it's something that we're looking at that's inherent, it's really not specific enough for us to see how we're progressing. And so the inherent things concern me. I do agree that we have other goals that we need to do the same thing, make sure that they are also predictive of what we're trying to achieve. But this is a non-negotiable. The other ones are goals. And I think what we are really trying to say here is that we want each student valued. We want the curriculum to be inclusive. We want it to be challenging. And so all I'm saying is that I agree with you. It may be inherent, but how do you know? How do you measure? So if it's somewhere else you have to look to figure it out, then I don't know if we're being targeted in our work as a board.
I don't want to belabor it, but but I'm thinking, when I listen to you, and I'm trying to listen to understand. So let me use this as an example. So when we say challenging and inclusive, I think that at some point throughout the board, we've talked about those advanced studies courses, and that certain schools may have those advanced study courses offered more than other schools. And that may find that there's a deficiency within there because we may not have the instructor, may not have a teacher that's in there, but I think that we've heard from the administration on times that you've done some virtual. You may have brought in an instructor who's now being able to offer virtually to meet the needs of those students across the division, though it may not be an instructor that's necessarily in that building. That may meet that need, but it's still going into how do you measure that? I mean, because that may be an isolated thing. But I think that when I look at the being inclusive and challenging, that you're doing those things. But it kind of comes out, and I also see it on the other piece, that this is the non-negotiables for the superintendent, that our other mechanism of that evaluation is what the superintendent provides to us in her annual evaluation. And that we will look for those particular things, that this may be high level enough, but the superintendent will then give us specific things throughout the year that when we get through the evaluation period, can clearly articulate, this is what I did, this is what the administration did to make sure that we moved the needle and that we met those particular needs, and that it may not necessarily be what we see, but we have the big overarching thing, and that at the evaluation period is when we actually get a chance to talk about those things and evaluate.
Right.
Can you remind me, are these items that are listed here, are they in our climate survey? Are they mentioned?
Not in a climate survey.
Okay.
Not in a climate survey.
I'm trying to
Yeah,
track, I'm
I'm
trying to
just saying,
figure out.
you're right on point. So all this stuff that we're doing with the interims eventually ties in with the superintendent's evaluation and our own evaluation. So if we define upfront what success looks like, whatever it is, then we're in a better position to determine whether or not one has achieved it. If it's just subjective, if it's just totally how 8 different people feel, then to me that causes us challenges, and that's why I think that because these things do tie into board evaluation as well as superintendent evaluation, the more we are clear, the better for all involved, and not leave it up to just, I mean, there's always going to be some rhythm and jazz and interpretation involved, but if we start off being non-specific, then it is likely we will have these discussions that are non-specific, and I don't know if we would achieve our goal that we've established of trying to make sure that each child is receiving what we say we want those children to receive, and how we're monitoring that's happening.
If I could add one thing. In part of our discussions with coming up with the measures for this non-negotiable, we did talk a lot about the curriculum. And I think one of the easy things that we could have done was just develop a listing of is this included in the curriculum, gone through every grade level, every course, said yep, 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 and then been able to track that percentage. I think with the knowledge I have of being an administrator in the experience I have in education, you can have the best curriculum in the world that has everything in it, but if it's not implemented in the classroom, then it doesn't matter. So being in the classrooms and offering the correct professional development is where we landed because of that.
Oh, I agree with you 100%, but what you just described was if it's not implemented in the classroom, it doesn't matter. What I'm asking you is, what does that look like that you know that is being implemented with fidelity that we could then, at a board level, be able to monitor? To me, you're making my point that what I don't want to be in your role where you're all the things that you all are doing, but if there are certain things that you have look-fors that indicate to you whether or not progress is being made regarding this curriculum and this non-negotiable, then what is that? What does that look like?
At the end of the day, Mr. Jordan, it would be the outcomes of our students. at the end of the day, that's what it should look like. Because we don't expect the board members to be in every classroom. That's the work of building principals and our job, to monitor instruction, that's our job. To provide the feedback immediately, that's our job. To have those courageous conversations with teachers when student outcomes are not where they need to be, that's our role. And then when you see the data, and we provide to you a variety of data, we give you PALS data, we give you STAR data, chronic absenteeism, we give you grades from students, we give you a variety of data that you monitor every time we meet. And so when those things are not where they need to be, when our student outcomes are not where they need to be, then we need to be able to say to you, these are the things that we tried, these are the things that did not work, and these are the adjustments that we're going to have to make moving forward. So I think you are monitoring the right things. You are monitoring the right things. And when it comes to the progress measures, these goals belong to you. You're right. The non-negotiables, you developed them, the board developed them. You gave them to me, and then you asked me to go back and work with my team on progress measures, which belong to me.
Right.
I had a table full of experts that we are paying a lot of money to be experts in their areas, and this is what we came up with. So we do believe that these progress measures are aligned with the non-negotiables and the goals that this board has established for us.
So, I agree with you. There's nothing in here and nothing I've said about school board members being in the classroom. But when we say that at the end of the day, it's the student outcome that determines whether or not it's working, what we're trying to do as a board is to be able to to monitor progress towards that goal. If we have to wait until the end of the cycle or the end of the year, it's too late. And so if there are things that you all are doing, adjustments that you are making, then all I'm saying is we would be able to have a understanding and being able to monitor that. It's not that we would be involved with the day-to-day means by which you do it.
There's not a work session that we don't provide to you data in accordance with our.
Yeah, but we're trying to streamline it, and so that's what we've been working on.
Like that.
No, we've said for
feel like that.
we've said every month for the last several months, we're going to focus on these goals and we're going to focus on these non-negotiables. They are high impact, and so yes, we can always receive other data, but if the board is monitoring a bunch of everything, then in essence, we are monitoring nothing. And so that's why we have prioritized what we want to monitor, and that's what we need to be able to give focus when we get all this other information on top of it. I think we lose that focus, and we start talking about all these other things and not being disciplined and focused on whether or not we are making progress toward the goals that we have within the year, and are we making progress over the 4 or 5 year period that we have for the goals.
Okay, I actually, for the sake of time, because we spent a lot of time on this one item, we're going to have to go back to it if we're going to get through the meeting. So I'd like to move on to non-negotiable number 2, please.
Right, non-negotiable 2. The superintendent will not allow underperforming schools to have low teacher fill rates for prolonged periods or make extensive use of substitutes, low-performing or provisionally licensed staff without implementing a high-impact strategy. We took that to mean underperforming schools are defined as schools that are accredited with conditions. Low-performing teachers are defined as teachers on performance improvement plans. Progress measure 2.1 is straight from our strategic plan, and that is to decrease the percentage of schools accredited with conditions that are not fully staffed with licensed teachers by the first day of school from 83.3% in the fall of '22 to 0% in the fall of 2027. Unfortunately for us this year, and this data has already been reported to the board, we were at 100% of our low-performing schools that were not fully staffed this year. All 16 of our schools that are accredited with conditions were not fully staffed at the beginning of the school year, so that's a target that we really have to focus on. The second progress measure would be the percentage of underperforming schools with low teacher fill rates or making extensive use of substitutes, low performing or provisionally licensed staff with a high impact staffing strategy in place will increase from 6.3% for the 23-24 school year to 100% for the 26-27 school year. So as Mr. Clanton pointed out earlier with Lindenwood, that would be 1 out of 16 of the schools right now. We had a high impact strategy to pilot that program to see how it would work. And this goal would say, that next year, 30% of our schools, we'd want to have a high impact strategy in place minimum to meet this goal as we continue to move that up to make sure that our schools are staffed on the first day of school.
Questions or comments?
All right, non-negotiable 3, the superintendent will not allow NPS students to be limited by practices that perpetuate systemic racism. So there were 2 progress measures. We pulled these from the strategic plan. These are monitored by the all-student level, but we do report the demographic data. And there were 2 areas that we considered that would show if there were systemic racism issues in place with Norfolk Public Schools. One is discipline, and the other is enrollment in higher level courses. So the first progress measure, 3.1, is the percentage of students issued short or long-term suspensions within the Asian, Black, Hispanic, White, and multiracial subgroups will move toward the division average of the percentage of students within each racial subgroup. And I'm not going to read through all the sub there, but you can see that the goal is by the 26-27 school year that we meet the division demographic averages for discipline, so that we're not over-suspending in a specific racial subgroup. And progress measure 3.2 is that the percentage of students enrolled in at least one advanced placement or dual enrollment class by graduation within the Asian, Black, Hispanic, White, and multiracial subgroups will move toward the division average of the percentage of students within each racial subgroup. So this is saying that when students graduate, having taken an AP or a dual enrollment course will match our demographics of the division.
Any questions?
No, go ahead. No, go ahead.
So. What?
No, go ahead. You're probably asking what I'm going to ask. Well, go ahead.
Well, you know what, you
No,
haven't
no,
spoken at
go
all
ahead.
yet. And
Go
I
ahead.
feel like I've had my fair share, so I'm going to defer to
No,
you.
go ahead. I'm good.
I'm going to pick someone.
I didn't want to interrupt. No, seriously. Seriously, Tom.
Go ahead, Ms. Messina, and then
Okay.
she'll get warmed up by the time you
Yeah.
get.
Okay, 'cause,
Taking it
trying
all
to
in.
mind my privilege and let her
I appreciate that.
for. So given the non-negotiable, I think we should be very focused about what and who we're trying to monitor in this, with this non-negotiable. So I wonder if, how the rest of the board feels about that in terms of being focused on lifting up specific subgroups versus having each subgroup listed here. Does that make sense? We're talking about reducing discipline rates among African-American students, then I think we should say that.
Oh, you talking about changing the,
Well, I'm not, I guess that's not for me to, to really say specifically, but that's what I guess that's what I'm looking for. I'll leave it at that. If these are the 2 main areas that the administration found to be high leverage areas where there could be systemic practices that we need to be closely monitoring to ensure that we are not perpetuating these practices.
Am I understanding that what you're asking is that we be more targeted with the progress measures? So instead of
Yes.
being, okay, so you're
Yes.
saying to
I'm
focus on
saying
certain
being more
subgroups rather than
targeted.
all of the above.
Right.
Just say it.
Yeah, just say it, yeah. Like who we're we're targeting and who we want to closely monitor in this.
So just for
Progress
clarification then, just looking at the table-wise, so delete all of the table except for our black subgroup, students in the black subgroup. If that's,
Well,
we're focusing, we just,
and I say that because currently, we know that's where disproportionality is, right? Well, not so much, but we know that's where we have a high percentage of students.
correct, our highest discipline is with our students in the black subgroup. And but I will tell you, for the courses, it's, for the advanced courses, we're not far off in any of the groups.
Okay.
But that we thought, when we discussed this data piece was, it's, if we're providing for all of our students and they're all able to have the same level of courses, as well as, if it's evenly dispersed with discipline, then it's not perpetuating the systemic racism. So we were looking at all races because of the fact that racism isn't just with our students who may be black.
Well, definitely. But with the discipline, this specific measure, that's what I was looking for.
Anyone else?
I mean, I hear what you're saying with the discipline piece, because, I mean, I would have said, well, students with disabilities and some other things, but we know that in that particular subgroup, and then we look at the population within the division, and then it goes back to what I said earlier. That's where I would want to hear throughout the year, and also from the superintendent, was the administration doing to target that? We've talked about restorative justice and some of those other things that we've talked about, the need to, in our alternative programs, what does that look like? Because if we change those things and we increase and so that it's not punitive, but we deal with the situations, the trauma that those students are facing, then that could reduce that number, and we keep more students in school when we deal with the things that they're dealing with.
I really like this table. I think it gives us the fuller picture. And if we might see one category go down and another go up, I mean, that's an indicator of something too. So I'm satisfied with this.
And do note that when one goes down, one will go up, because it has to equal 100%.
Right.
All right. So,
So, I mean, and that's another thing too, is, people will say, oh, now you're suspending more Asian children. Well, it has to equal 100%. They level out as it goes
Right.
through. And ultimately, that's why the goal is to get to where the division demographics fall.
I'll add one question to that then. Would it be possible, I'm off because I'm springing this on you. Would it be possible to also have raw numbers with this? Because when I'm looking at this, and I understand how statistics work, I get how percentages work. When one changes, the other one's going to change with it. The public might not understand that, because when you're looking at that, you're seeing, it looks like we're almost encouraging an increase in its percentage, which looks weird. We understand that, but the public might not. And so if we're, in essence, if we know which groups we're targeting and what strategies, and so that kind of speaks to strategy piece, more so than we're just trying to look at, are we sure that we're not missing anybody? Are we sure we're not seeing anything? So if we have the raw numbers to go with that, then we can see that the numbers went down in a certain group, another one went down, but technically the percentage went up, and at least it's clear.
We can put raw numbers parenthetically underneath each percentage.
They appreciate the chart. A concern that I have is that the chart still has targets for the end of the year, for the end of each year. And so as a board, non-negotiables may get monitored twice a year. It's not the same as goals. But there's nothing within this school year. So if we were to come back later and get a monitoring report on this measure, what would you present to us that would show that what progress is being made throughout the year? So if, I'll just use Asian students, if the goal is to be at 3.3%, then how do we get a report or something that shows that for each quarter or whatever it is, each semester, how we're seeing the progress, because that then gives the board an indication whether or not we are on track and making progress, and not have to wait until June or July at the end of the year to determine whether or not we achieve what we wanted to achieve for the year. The whole point of this is for the board to be able to monitor, are we making progress towards the goals, or towards the, in this case, towards the non-negotiable targets that you've provided.
So, Mr. Jordan, when we were building this, and we, to be quite honest, we did a lot of research and looking at other divisions and other areas that have done this, and we found just a few other divisions that had non-negotiables or something similar to this, and those divisions had annual measures, because I think the non-negotiables are saying, how do we know we're not doing this? And less goal-oriented and more each year making sure that we're moving towards targets each year that show that these non-negotiables are in fact, not happening across the division. So we focused on annual targets. I will say with some of these, like with the discipline, there could be a semester report on discipline to see where it is, but with AP and dual enrollment, course enrollment, the students are enrolled or they're not in the fall of the courses.
I was focused on this one, yeah.
With some, if the board requested, data to see how we were doing, there are some, I think we could do that during the year, but we really focused on annual targets for non-negotiables. Again, because, we've heard concerns of data overload, and if we have 5 board goals that we're presenting on a regular basis, then 5 non-negotiables that we're presenting on a regular basis, there's a lot of data coming your way again, which some love and some don't.
Streamlined, I think it'd be less if we focus it and target it.
Say that again, Mr. Jordan, please.
I think there would be less overload if we focus and target it. I mean, you can always provide us with reports or post something somewhere that if anybody wants to dig deeper than they can, but at these sessions, I don't think we need to go through this. How are we doing? What's working? What's not working? Are we making progress in cycle? And that's what we're focused on. If somebody wants to, we don't have a goal about school-by-school data, so if somebody wants to see school-by-school data, you all provide that and we can read it, but we don't have to spend time in our meeting looking at school-by-school data if that's not one of the goals that the board has established that it wants to prioritize. I don't think we have that in our goals. That's why I keep saying I think that my concern is we are layering. I don't want to layer. I want whatever the behavior was before, we need that to stop, and then make the shift to what we're trying to achieve here, so you don't end up overworking yourselves with data and bombarding us with data that may or may not be supportive of the monitoring that we need to do, like in sessions like this.
I'm hopeful you'll see when we review the monitoring reports for Goal 1 and Goal 2 tonight that we tried to streamline.
Quick question, this is kind of out there. Anybody, y'all remember our dashboard?
It's up
It's there.
It's there.
Got it.
Yeah.
So is there a way that with some of this data information that we could
Hopefully.
utilize our dashboard so that we don't necessarily have to come in, we can go readily see it, whatever else, if it's on a month or quarterly, whatever else, that there's a central depository where that information is located at, and we can go to it.
We can possibly build out more of the iDashboard once these are solidified as well. And
Isn't that what iDashboard's for?
Exactly.
We should just use it.
We've got a place that we can put all this stuff at, we just gotta hunker down and say what it is.
Go ahead, Dr. Poole.
all right, number 4, the superintendent will not allow major initiatives to go forth or make major decisions without including demographic and representative family, student, teacher, and community voice by using culturally affirming and responsive communication and engagement outreach strategies, particularly to our EL families. So progress measure 4.1, Really focusing on our division-level surveys to include demographic requests to know who is responding to our surveys, and making sure that's done 100% of the time by spring 2027. Right now, it is not done 100% of the time, and we're aware of that. In progress measure 4.2, that all division-level communications and surveys will be readily available in both English and Spanish versions, as well as other languages by request by 100% of the time with the spring of 2027.
Don't want to belabor on this one here, but just a quick question, Dr. Birdsong. I know at one point, we were looking at an app for Norfolk Public Schools, and I think that there's still a version of that out there that kind of supports our website. I've always thought that a better way, if we could get our division and folks to download an app where they can readily get information and go to, and that where these surveys, even like we're doing with the text messaging now, we can push things that we might get a better response back because it's right then and there.
Vision app.
Yeah, like a school division, I found it. I found the NPS app. It just hadn't been, I think it was in the testing, so I ain't trying, don't put it out there for everybody to go look at it. It's not ready.
Right.
On it.
It's not ready, don't.
I know.
But I'm saying that if we had a division app, I think, because it's the same thing, we get in there, it's always a small percentage of folks who have it, but I can guarantee you, I don't care what economic group you're in, somebody got a cell phone.
Or we do throw them on the back.
And they're, but that's just my idea of, putting it out there, that might be something that we could push.
Well, and on our current surveys, the ones that I've taken, on the website, it has, do you prefer English or Spanish?
Right. So the new survey tool we use, it automatically translates English and Spanish. But we want to make sure parents are aware that we'll create a way that if they don't speak English or Spanish, they need it in a different language of how we can do that for them.
Accommodating, okay.
All right, number 5, the superintendent will not neglect to cultivate a safe, caring, and welcoming environment in any central administration department, school building, and classroom because the physical and social emotional needs of each student and member of the NPS workforce are valued. So progress measure 5.1 is directly from the strategic plan to increase the percentage of students with no disciplinary incidents from 83% during the SY 22-23 to 88% during SY 26-27. And the second progress measure is a new one. We started this year, actually. Results focused on student social awareness as measured by the Panorama Social Emotional Learning Student Competency and Well-Being Measure Survey will increase from 58% to 85% for grades 3 through 5 and 30% to 80% in grades 6 through 12.
Comments? Does this tie into the No Matter What award?
As far as,
This was the board's non-negotiable.
Yeah.
We had to come up with the
Okay,
interims.
you're right, yeah. I love that award. I thought that was great.
Oh, we're still doing the
Yeah.
award.
Yeah, we are.
We're doing it
Exciting.
tomorrow, in fact.
Friday,
No, Friday.
we're out and about again.
Friday.
Anyone else?
My pleasure.
And up next, we have the school board goals monitoring reports.
Pull up the goal 1 PowerPoint, please, Ms. Tanner.
And we'd like to design this portion to be more interactive. I think we have had some back and forth, but I'd like to continue that manner.
Clearly means,
More discussion, less
All about it.
presentation.
okay.
And we did, yeah, we tried to cut down a bit on this presentation from the past, for sure. So I'll try to be less verbose in the future on when I go through it, but I just want to make sure you guys have an understanding of it. So good afternoon, Madam Chair, Dr. Martin, Vice Chair, Ms. Buffalo, members of the board, Dr. Birdsong. This presentation will focus on data for quarter 1 chronic absenteeism dropouts that's related directly to board goal 1. As a reminder to the public, board goal 1 is that 100% of schools will be accredited by the 2027-2028 accreditation year, which is the test administration year of 26-27. The percentage of schools meeting accreditation requirements will increase from 57.1% during accreditation year 22-23 to 65.8% during accreditation year 24-25. So looking at quarter 1, or the current school year, chronic absenteeism dropped compared to the previous 2 years. And I'd like to point out that even though pre-K does not count in school accreditation monitoring, this data is key to ensure students will be on target for kindergarten and beyond. And as seen in the data, pre-K and kindergarten have the highest rates and are the only ones in red, while the other grades are in yellow, 1, 2, and 3 are in yellow, and grades 4 and 5 are in the green. So you can see that focus on pre-K is pretty important to understand the importance of coming to school. Although all grades have improved, more is needed in that area. For secondary, all grades reduced their rates except for grades 10 and 11, where there were slight increases. And please note, none of the grade levels for secondary are in the red area. Looking at the same data demographically, declines were seen in all areas. Here's our L, SWD, and SES, and our racial breakdown. Moving to the dropout data, this is focused on the current 2024 cohort. So these are students who are on track to graduate this year, not all K through 12 students. It's just our students that are on point to graduate this year. This slide shows the dropout rates by school with the number of students included at the bottom of the slide. This data represents the worst case scenario. In other words, even if the school is able to locate the student and is actively working on interventions and recovery, the student remains counted here until we're certain the students begun work again, and especially when getting them to enroll into open campus. We always want to look at the worst case scenario throughout the year, so we redouble our efforts and have a realistic outlook of what the outcome could be. And here are the same data by demographics. The English learner subgroup is high at the moment. However, with only 8 students represented, each student recovered will make a great difference in this percentage. And that goes, Ms. Stone, to your comment about putting the values on there as well. And here are the rest of the demographic data. So focusing on board goal 1, the first interim measure is on chronic absenteeism. And for quarter 1, the target was to be at or below 19%, and the actual data is 18.1%, so we've outperformed the target. And the second interim measure focuses on dropout rates. For quarter 1, the target was to be at or below 10%, with the actual data being 12.5%, and this target was not met. So what does this data show? For chronic absenteeism, the interim measure target has been met. Therefore, NPS should show school accreditation improvements in relation to chronic absenteeism based on first quarter data. However, for dropouts, the division did not meet the interim measure target, and the target is at risk of not making the target without further interventions. And this would put some of our high schools at risk of not being, or of being accredited with conditions for the dropout category. Some areas of strength include for chronic absenteeism, all grades except for 10 and 11 showed improvements compared to quarter 1 of school year 23, and all demographic groups showed improvements compared to quarter 1 of last year as well. Attendance data demonstrates a holistic effort to implement MTSS division-wide. This effort continues to include communications, root cause analysis, and professional development to provide proactive interventions to support students on-time daily attendance at school, ready to engage in learning. Some areas for opportunity or for growth for dropout rates. 1 high school is in the yellow range, while the other 4 are in the red. And all demographic groups, except for students with disabilities, Asian students and white students are in the red range as well. However, this data remains quite fluid throughout the school year as schools and graduation coaches consistently and constantly work to recover dropouts. The need to create more focused efforts with pre-kindergarten and kindergarten to improve chronic absenteeism rates is also needed within the chronic absenteeism area. And some next steps for us to move this work forward include continuing to implement the attendance MTSS plans, weekly communications with school principals to include attendance tips and strategies, which they do get once a week, continuing the attendance challenges and campaigns, which I'm sure you've all seen, the fun that our schools are having with that, and I do believe that effort is really working. Funding to support graduation coaches and other staff members to go to the community to meet with students chronically absent or who have dropped out, which part of that was included in the all-in funding plan as well for absenteeism. Implementation of weekly school-level MTSS team meetings at all schools, and additional professional development for MTSS teams on wraparound support when wraparound support is appropriate and needed. So that was as quick as I could go, and thank you for the opportunity, and we stand ready for questions and discussion.
One. There's a lot of really great things in here. Thank you for all of that, and you're very succinct. Good job. And this might be me misunderstanding and not knowing everything that goes into the multi-tiered everything. So if arts, extracurriculars, programs, these are things that bring kids in, they're enjoying, it gives them a break from in between everything else, it gives them a reason to come to school. It's something I care about, so I'm just asking if that is part of how we're combating absenteeism and dropout rates.
As a former band student and as a parent of a band student and
Met
a.
my husband there, so
And a,
yeah.
and a, and a drama, and a drama student, yes, that's fundamental. You know, getting students involved in school is key. In after-school activities, if they want to play a sport, play an instrument, sing or dance on stage, whatever it may be in a club, the more involved they are, the more likely they'll come to school. The research supports that through and throughout. So really, you know, our principals do have allocated funds for stipends to support that, but the support from the board comes in if there's requests for more or, you know, requests for additional clubs or items like that. You'll also notice, you know, one of the things we do with some of our Title IV money is instrument replacements as well. Sometimes we ask for end-of-year money for that. So things that support those, that's where the support from the board really would come from, because we do want our students to be heavily involved from elementary through secondary. So we even added a lot of clubs at the elementary level over the past couple of years.
Right. There was just one thing I didn't see in the next step, so I was just curious for my own information, so thank you.
I have just one question. Dr. Pohl, does Norfolk still do Saturday school? We still have Saturday school in place?
You'll have it.
Saturday, okay. All right, thank you.
Well, let me preface this, though. I want to be very clear and say it publicly. Saturday school does not make up for chronic absenteeism.
Right.
I wanna
No,
be
I
very
was
clear about
just,
that.
I was
Yeah.
just talking about getting, you know, one intervention, getting kids back on track, just
Yeah,
that extra,
back on track,
academically back
absolutely.
on track.
But you can't make up for chronic
Right,
absenteeism.
yeah, I know that,
The
yeah.
video has been very clear about that.
Dr. Gabriel, go ahead.
Dr. Pohl, with regards to the chronic absenteeism and the efforts that are made by the graduation coaches and various individuals who are going out into the homes of the students and digging a little bit deeper as to the root cause as to why they are chronically absent, have you all found any success in getting these kids into open campus because of the flexibility of that program? And what type of feedback have the graduation coaches and the other individuals, what are they hearing from the kids and the families as to why they are chronically absent?
So I would probably have to defer to Dr. Kimsey or Dr. Cataldo for that.
That is a great question. And yes, they get a lot of feedback. So we do have some students who have chosen to take jobs to support their families. Open Campus is a great resource, and we're working on increasing the enrollment, as I shared back in May. And we have steadily increased that enrollment during the last 3.5 years, and we will continue to do so. So having to support family with paying jobs is one. There are almost as many reasons as there are students who don't come to school, but if I were to name the top ones, that's one of the top ones for our high school students.
Employment then?
Employment to support the family, and employment because right now, as we realize with our job market the way it is right now, students see that, oh, I can go out here and work construction for so much more money. I can be, you know, I can have this money, I can be doing what I want to do, and they're not seeing that longer-term goal of, okay, that works for right now, but where am I going with my future when I'm 25 and I'm still having to work construction when I really wanted to be an engineer or whatever? And so part of our strategy is helping to really educate our students and their families around the value of that education, even though it may not seem like it's paying off right this second. It will pay off in the future, as we know, and the data clearly shows that.
And is the VDOE, if the child has a authentic medical reason for being out,
Yes.
prolonged illness, whatever the case might be, if they have a documented medical note, how is that accounted for in chronic absenteeism?
Another great question. So we have what's called intermittent homebound. Let's say a student with a chronic asthma, sickle cell, those kind of things. There is a process they go through to be approved for that. It requires doctor documentation, all that. That is done through learning support. Once that documentation is on file, every time the student is absent for that documented condition, and we have that documentation that they are, actually that absence does not count for chronic absenteeism in that case.
Very good information to know.
Yes, yes.
That might be important to put in some PTA newsletters for parents to know, because if their child does have a chronic illness, asthma, there are a lot of different illnesses that we have, certain allergies. If they know ahead of time as they're planning their wellness checks and things like that, if that is paperwork or something that can be done ahead of time, I think that might be very helpful. I don't know that many parents are aware of that, and I can definitely share that information with the medical community as well.
Yes, ma'am.
Because they do come to us.
And actually, that's interesting that you
yes.
said that, because it just came up in a data meeting I was in the
Okay.
last month, where I was at a school and we talked about a specific student where this student was out all the time due to his asthma.
Right.
And we were able to problem solve with the principal. There was a representative from learning support at the table at the data meeting, and we talked about how to get that support for the family. But in that conversation, I realized too, that yes, we need to make sure our principals are very aware of how to do this. It is not an automatic thing, and there is quite the process for intermittent homebound. So I don't want to say it's an easy thing. It is not.
Well, I think it actually would benefit both parties, because if there's responsibility on the parent to make sure that if their child is ill, they're going to their provider to make sure that they are being seen, evaluated, and getting appropriate treatment. So then the provider is staying up to date with helping to get that child, through this particular illness or episode. And also, it allows the school division to not be penalized for a child who's being absent for a legitimate reason. So I think we might be able to
Yes.
do some good work on this area and help to make a little bit of a difference to
Agreed.
bring these numbers up.
Agreed.
Okay.
Agreed.
But more specifically, as it relates to medical appointments and things of that nature, when a child is sick, for example, just has a cold, and maybe for whatever reason, it's been a hard season for that child, they may be out 1 day, 1 week, in 3 more weeks, they may be out 2 days. Talk to the board about how that works
Absolutely.
as it relates to chronic absenteeism.
Yes, so that actually, the parent often will send us a note saying, okay, Barbara had a cold, the flu, whatever it was. It counts as an excused absence in my attendance. However, it still counts against us for chronic absenteeism. And it will
I wanted you to
continue
make
to
that
do so.
clear, 'cause I
Yes.
think that's what you were
So excused absences are still counted toward chronic absenteeism
If
numbers.
that child has asthma and has a cold and is having a flare as a result of because they have that underlying condition, and they're out for, instead of maybe just 2 days with that fever, because we don't want them in school if they have a fever, right? We want them to stay home, get better, and then come back. But if they're out for an extended amount of time because of wheezing or whatever the case might be, that is where we can,
Yes,
gain some days.
Yes, as long as they have been through that pre-approval process, which is not an automatic thing. So it requires diligence on the side of the family, the school, everybody to follow through with that. And then they also have to bring notes that demonstrate, yes, I went to my provider, this was a flare of my asthma, that is my reason for being approved for intermittent homebound.
Thank you, Dr. Kimsey. Go ahead, Ms. Basine.
Thank you, Dr. Pohl. So I have a couple of questions. I'm going to start with chronic absenteeism. So you talked about the attendance tips and strategies that seem to be working, leading towards the positive trends that we're seeing with chronic absenteeism. And so I'd like to hear a little more about how you know that they're working and if you have any information to share about that.
Well, I don't know that there's a direct correlation to which tips and things are working, but I think with the campaign that's been put together this year, the weekly information that's sent to principals, and the data showing our improvements, that there's a correlation that way. But I don't, there's no direct correlation saying this exact tip has made the difference in this exact school.
Or strategy, not
Right.
necessarily. So a specific strategy that I'm interested in is around, I know last spring, especially around those students that were, received out-of-school suspension, there was an opportunity to, if they had completed the work, that they were counted as present. And is that a practice that we're still continuing? And are you seeing that as a contributing factor to the positive trend that we're seeing?
So when it's allowable and when we're able to do, when a student is at home, but they've done the work and there's collaboration with a teacher and we're able to count that, we do. And yes, that made a difference last year. I know Dr. Kimsey worked very closely with the principals to make sure it was documented properly within our attendance system.
Okay, and
Meaningful engagement.
Correct.
meaningful engagement, yes. And how is that, do you know how that's working this year? Since we know ahead of time, like, is that practice still continuing
Yes.
this year? Right, so okay,
And we're out of the gate this year.
right.
It was a part of conversation and the importance of it to document it properly in Synergy to make sure that it's documented.
That's probably a big,
Question, because it makes a significant difference with our data.
yeah,
And
especially at the high
so,
school.
knowing from day one that it's allowed and principals knowing that it's allowed and making sure it's communicated to our SDSs and our classroom teachers, it makes a difference with our data.
Beneficial to the student who's
Right.
out,
At the end of the
obviously.
day.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Well, I appreciate that, and I just wanted to be sure that that's still continuing. My next question is around the dropout rates. So we have an early warning system in place, correct? That is helping us capture who the students are and how we might put forth preventative strategies. And one specific subgroup, that I noticed in the data is our EL population. So with the strategies that you have included here, can you speak a little more about the targeted strategies that you're using for that specific subgroup and other ways, not just for that specific subgroup, but how the board can better help and support the district's efforts around dropout?
So I think one of the most important things that the board already helped with was the inclusion of more graduation coaches. Because the graduation coach is the front line, they look at the seniors, then the juniors that are at risk, then sophomores, and then, as freshmen, are at risk of not passing courses, they focus on all those. That's our number one strategy at the high school level, specifically for dropouts. And I think the continued support would be, ability to have the funds to pay them even after hours, to go knocking on doors. Like Dr. Kimsey said, a lot of them, it's because they're working during the day. So when our graduation coaches are working during the day, they won't be able to find the student, but they may be able to find them at 6 or 7 at night at dinner time or something like that. So, you know, those strategies where they're out and about are, I think, some of our most effective of getting students back.
We have like bilingual and multilingual individuals that are going out and.
We have a few, and we also have, remember, a couple of years ago, we added the 2 family engagement specialists to our ESL department, ESL office, and they help with that as well. And then we also have Voyant, so no matter what, you know, we can, when we're there, we can do it, and I will let you know, our folks are using Google Translate, they're using whatever they can to make the effort wherever they can.
Thanks, you.
So I know the state accreditation system drives this chronic absenteeism focus and attention based upon accreditation. I know that being present is important. I really don't think it deals with children. I think it deals more with adults. In this interim, so we have chronic absenteeism and dropout, but we don't have anything just dealing with mastery of content that also plays a significant role in accreditation. Can you speak to, you know, how predictive is the chronic absenteeism to accreditation aligned with or against students be able to master English, math, and what the other subjects are that we want students?
I think, Mr. Jordan, I'd go back to the initial conversations on Board Goal 1 when the interim measures were first discussed. We could have 100 different measures on here around student academics and achievement, but the other board goals are hitting those. So that the board gets updates on the academic data throughout the year to know how we're doing for accreditation-wise. But what those other goals don't hit are chronic absenteeism and dropout rate. And we are seeing schools affected with our accreditation based on dropout rate and chronic absenteeism. And if we don't focus on those, we won't reach that 100% goal. And I think under the other goals that the board has, we're looking at the academics pretty strongly, that if we meet those goals, make accreditation.
And then my other comment is, I think that generally having 2 monitoring reports on the agenda is about what a board can consume and be effective with. So I would recommend that we take the next update and see if we can just include it as part of a workshop or work session or something at the next board meeting. Because I think it's a lot that we've dissected here, and you know, after a while, I think it's just a lot to try to consume. So
Moving forward, Mr. Jordan, moving forward. You said moving forward.
well, I was saying tonight
Start
that
now.
rather than
No, we still have
but
PALS
this, you know,
data and-
that's just a thought. But once we get that monitoring calendar that lays out what we'll be doing over the next 3 years, you know, we'll see that. But generally speaking, I think, you know, trying to do 2 monitoring reports at a work session is about all of us can handle.
So, so do we feel comfortable just saving our questions for email on the PALS data, or do you want to postpone it till January?
I was just saying-
PALS data at some point, just because
Okay.
it's such good news.
It is.
Okay.
But I agree, maybe January, you know,
So I'm not opposed to January.
Oh, okay, I was thinking at the business meeting, but
Oh, come on,
Oh,
a week later?
business meeting?
Yeah, we still
we
got
can
time.
just
that.
do it, you know, start at 3 and have a workshop and then,
You only have a week.
Yeah.
It's already posted, it's already done, so it's just the presenting, you know.
So we have to add PALS
But
data.
the PALS data is really
Me.
good.
Please know if there are reports that you don't want, like, let us know in advance, so we won't spend the time in preparing the presentations and pulling the things together that we think you're going to need. That would be helpful for us, and we're happy to do whatever the board would like us to do.
we all agreed on a template, and I think that's, you know,
Focus on.
So,
get a practice and see if we can get better at it.
yeah, we need to postpone the PALS data discussion while also having 50% of our agenda focusing on student outcomes.
Yeah, because it's not so much the PALS data as it is the reading goal.
Right.
So what we're focusing on is how we're making progress towards the reading goal, and the PALS and the STAR information is what gives us an indication of what we can predict, you know, is likely to occur.
Which we tried to do better this time with reporting, with the end of it.
Okay, all right. Are you ready to move on to
Calendar?
3.02? Yes, please.
Ms. Tanner, would you pull up the calendar presentation, please?
We're skipping the goals, and we're going to do that next week, correct?
Yeah, the
Is that
rest
what
of them.
you're
We did
saying?
goal 1, but
Okay.
we'll do goal 2 next week, because we did
Okay.
goal 1.
Okay, we did goal 1.
Yeah, we
should
did.
just do goal 2. We're good. Good, we're good.
All right, well, how about if I just start going through the script as Ms. Tanner's
Go
still
for it.
pulling it up? So good afternoon again, everybody. This presentation, we're going to review the calendar guidelines and the development process of the two options, include the inclement weather days for each option, survey data, and amended options for the selection based off survey data. The length of the school year, these are just the VDOE's non-negotiables, let's speak on the calendar. The length of the school year is at least 180 teaching days or 990 teaching hours. In Norfolk, we've gone with the hours the past few years to make sure that we exceed that. This time requirement excludes lunch, so you have to take the half hour out for lunch. However, instructional time may include recess up to 15% of the day, which is what gave us the ability to add some recess time to our elementary schools this year. And there are 6 hours and 25 minutes per full day, or 355 minutes of instructional time each full day of school, and 235 minutes each early release day. As the options were developed for the academic calendars, the committee members listed on the slide were given the parameters shared on the last slide, and asked to consider pluses and deltas from this year's calendar as they work to develop a new calendar. And as you can see, membership included teachers, building level administrators, leadership from the NFT and the EAN, as well as central office leadership. Starting in late September, we did start much earlier this year to have it voted on earlier. The committee met to establish draft calendars. These calendars were then presented to members of the teacher forum as well in late October, prior to the public survey. And the calendar committee then met to review the survey results and finalize options for the board that included considerations from the community. So as directed by the board last year, both options begin school 2 weeks prior to Labor Day. Option 1 has 190 teacher work days, 180 student school days, and 1,057 hours of instruction, which I do want to point out is nearly 4 days more instructional time than what we currently have. It has a full parent-teacher conference day, 3 teacher PD work days, 3-day Thanksgiving break, a 2-week winter break, and a 1-day March break, which we've become accustomed to. We discussed a couple years ago about adding that March break in because the break that's needed. And this option also ends 1 week later than option 2. That was the big difference. So this ends the same time we add, so it did extend our school year by a week. Option 2 also begins 2 weeks prior to Labor Day as directed by the board. Has 189 teacher work days, so it's 1 less teacher work day, although we know the teacher contract is 200 days, and those additional days are flexible. This includes 2 flex work days as presented to the community. Only has 177 student days and 1,037 hours of instruction. Still maintains the 1 full parent-teacher conference day, 4 professional development work days, only a 2-day Thanksgiving break, and a 2-week winter break, and no March break are included because we had to find the time. This one ends the week earlier. So this one ends the last day of May. This would be the inclement weather days. The first 4 days would be banked, and the 5th day, we'd have a date where we'd have to do for that. And this is the second year, what it would be. And you notice we did a 2-year range of calendars so that we're further ahead. And then next year, we'd present a calendar that's a year and a half out. So we stay very far ahead for our community. With the calendar survey closing after nearly 2 weeks of being open, there were a total of 3,563 responses, with the majority of the input, or 41%, coming from parents or guardians, followed closely with 34% from teachers and staff and 5% from students. And here's the demographics of our response. And as a reminder, this is self-reported. And here's the breakdown of the ranking of the 2 options for each group. Included in the parentheses are the total percentage of votes for that specific option. And as you can see, for the combined at the end, the majority chose option 2. There was about a 10% margin. I will say the vast majority of comments for both options, overwhelmingly in fact, were to start after Labor Day, or to just start a week before Labor Day like we did this year. For option 1, there were more comments that were focused on ending earlier like option 2, but keeping all the holidays intact. Not combining the professional development and work days were a pretty popular comment as well. Adding teacher work days and moving the August professional development day to the in-service week so that the teachers didn't have to come back that Friday before. For option 2, bring back the 3-day Thanksgiving break was very popular. Not combining the professional development and work days, adding a March break back in, and moving the August professional development day to the in-service week. So based on these comments, after considering the feedback and meeting again with the calendar committee, these were the 2 options that were created to present to the board for your consideration. For option 1, the August professional development day was moved to the amended calendar option to be during the in-service day, so it created a flex day for the teachers, so they have one flex day in their 190 work days now. In an effort to keep the increased instructional time for this option, though, there were no other changes that were made to this calendar. And for option 2, after considering feedback for option 2, the early release day prior to Thanksgiving was changed to a full day off, reducing instructional time by 4 hours. However, the March professional day was moved the week before, but there was not a March break added to the calendar. The August professional development day was moved to the in-service week. And in order to make up for the Thanksgiving day for the teacher work days, the election day was made a flex teacher work day instead of a teacher holiday as in option 1. And that's the 2 options and the results from the survey for you.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Go ahead, Dr. Gabriel.
Dr. Pohl. And I will say that as soon as I received the survey, I tried to put it out to as many people as possible to have them comment on it. And I would have to say I fielded, I don't know if
It's okay.
I received a lot of feedback with regards to starting 2 weeks early. And I can understand this kind of originated from the board discussion of the calendar, which is what happened last year, which that discussion, there was a lot of things going on during that particular. But I personally am not in favor of starting 2 weeks early. I think 1 week early is good, and the reason that we wanted to of instruction to help them with regards to pacing as we got closer and closer to the SOLs. But the 2 weeks, I think 2 weeks imposes a lot on family, especially families who have plans. And I know that every family is a little different, but I know that was a concern that I had, and that was a concern that a lot of families that reached out to me had. And I said, send your comments, do the survey, and write where it says, do you have any feedback? Write it in there. I know that's not one of our options that we have. So at this point in time, am I correct to say that we either have option one or option two, the amended versions of both? Okay.
Board's decision, I mean, certainly it's important to get feedback from our community. And last year, when we presented to the board, we provided the community's feedback, and we felt like we were reprimanded because we didn't come back with a calendar that started a week or two early. And so it was very clear to us that we were directed to move forward with only options starting 2 weeks early. So that's what we did.
And, go ahead.
Or the only request would be if the board chooses not to do 2 weeks early, we need to know a start date. Because if we don't have a start date, we can't start scheduling. So the vote next week, whether it's on option one or option two, or to say go back to the table because we're going to start a week early, we need to know a start date in December, or else we put ourselves behind for scheduling and staffing.
I understand that, because I remember that's part of the discussion that we had
Correct.
last year. So I don't want to, I want to hear the feedback from my other colleagues, and certainly if the poll is to just say option one or option two and then go with that. But I think it's important that there were many, many, many individuals who participated that said 2 weeks is too much. Starting a week early is definitely workable. We understand the reasoning behind it, and I thought that the calendar that you all put together for what we're going through this year has worked out so far pretty well. That's what I've received feedback on. So, y'all think?
Well, I will say I too got feedback that 2 weeks were just a bit much from individuals who reached out to me. So I do have a concern about 2 weeks versus 1 week. This calendar seemed to, first of all, I get jitters because I think the very first vote I took was the calendar.
There were a lot of motions and
Yes.
seconds and friendly
I
amendments.
appreciate
and
2 instead
it
of 4.
was a parliamentary exercise.
Yes, it was. So,
does sound
yeah. So with that said, yeah, I do have some concerns about the 2-week start.
Go ahead, Mr.
So
Carter.
the conversation around the 2-week start was around, the focus was what can we do that's best for children to get them the instructional time that they need. So you all may recall, the General Assembly for years would not allow school divisions to start early unless they had a weather condition. So the western part of the state, probably from Charlottesville going that way, they have started 2 weeks early for some time, in part because of they were able to get the weather exception or exemption. I guess I just want to be clear with calendar number 2. Are we or are we not providing additional instruction hours? Like, it's hard for me to kind of.
It's slightly more than we have this year, but not a great deal more than we have this year.
Calendar 2 is slightly more than what
Yeah,
we
this
currently
year, I
have.
think we have 1,027 hours.
But
and
it's less than calendar option 1.
Option one, because remember, option one, we extended a week. So option one gave us that affordability to have almost 4 more days of instruction.
So I support option 2 with the idea that, so school ends in May, correct?
For option two, school would end in May.
Yeah, so I think if we start 2 weeks earlier, then we should get out earlier. And, but again, the whole conversation was about what's best for students. And if you're all telling us that, while it may be inconvenient for some adults, if you're saying that you think that this can work for students, then that's what I want to hear.
So, and I don't know of any solid research that would say starting 2 weeks early versus or 2 weeks before Labor Day versus 1 week. However, when you consider we're able to get more instruction in before SOL testing, and the big one is AP exams.
Yeah, that's what,
AP
that's what the
exams are set.
rationale was, yeah.
You know, that's 2 weeks more instructional time beforehand. So it gives our students more of an upper hand. When you compare us to divisions, similar divisions in different states or, you know, that have that 2 weeks. In some schools, I mean, in Georgia, they go back August 1st.
Right.
Yeah, they
That gives
do.
them a month more instructional time.
And that's
So-
why I like that option too, because I think that should drive, drive our decision-making.
Are those divisions seeing better outcomes in testing?
I don't have the date in front of me.
Oh, okay.
I just
Sorry,
know
you mentioned- I thought maybe there was.
they have more time to get through the content
Sure.
and to review prior to the assessment.
I think some of the feedback that's really overlying all this conversation is people don't want to change every year. So we have to figure out what we're going
What's
to do
gonna-
and stick with it, what works best for our district.
Last year, the discussion focused around that, letting them know last year that, you know, that it was going to be 1 week this year, 2 weeks the next year. That was our takeaway. So that's why we did the 2
That's what
weeks,
was
because we
said,
didn't,
yeah.
That's what was said.
we didn't want to put the board up to what happened last year, where the
Right.
data said on the surveys, overwhelmingly, we want to start after Labor Day, and the board says, no, it's more important to us for instruction, we're going to start a week before. So this year, we took the lead from the board to say, we're going to do 2 weeks.
It's in
And
2
so we did, and we took the brunt on that survey. All the people that contacted you, they called 5 of their friends, and they all responded to the survey, and then they called us. They were like, what's with this 2 weeks early? But we felt it wouldn't be fair to the board to do an option like this year and 2 weeks early if the board truly directed us to do 2 weeks early, because then it would set you up again for saying, no, we said 2 weeks early, so we did 2 weeks early.
Well, I was just going to show my support for the 2 weeks early ending for option 2, which also ends early, which I did, you know, when you talk through it with people, you know, it's like, okay, but you get the 2 weeks on the front end versus on the back end. And I appreciate what I think I did get positive feedback around, and that I truly appreciate is the 2-year block. So we have a schedule for 2 years, and I would like us to continue that model of being able to plan out for 2 years. And I've heard from, at the school level, that that's beneficial from a scheduling standpoint also. But it's interesting to me when you look at the survey data too, that those that are in our schoolhouses the most are the ones that are, you know, seem to be
Okay.
more in alignment, right? You know, for the options, like our students and teachers are on the same page. And then, anyway, that was a whole other. But I personally, you know, I thought we had great discussion last year. I think we were very clear about, you know, transitioning to this 2-year, start 1 year this year, transitioning to 2 years. Change is hard, and I believe, you know, much of the state is going to be moving toward this pre-Labor Day start, and I think we've got to move with the time. So I support option 2, along with the feedback that we received, and
Well, I do see one shining star in all of this. Our district will not have to compete with the other school divisions when scheduling graduation.
Yeah, that was going to be my other thing.
I think
That's
that's
an
there-
interesting point, because how does that affect athletics with us starting 2 weeks early?
So there are two things where we talked about internally. Athletics was one.
Okay?
And then the other one is also Governor's Schools for the Art, because they don't start until after Labor Day right now.
Oh,
So that was another, and I did email and speak with the director, and her response was, until more divisions on the south side
they're not going to.
start earlier, they're not going to change their start date. However, for dual enrollment and for different college level courses that we offer, this is much more in line with where we want to be. So there's things you have to weigh, and we did talk to Mr. Stuttmiller. He's also on the committee, so he's aware of this, and you know, on the committee, September 27th, the first meeting, it was, we're going to start 2 weeks early, and what do we need to do to move that forward?
Certainly, the athletics are not, they're important, but they're not the objective here.
Correct.
The objective is student outcomes. I wouldn't necessarily say adult inconveniences. I think that adults are the responsible persons to keep. And I respect their feedback. If they want that time with their family at the end of August, then that's what they value. But certainly, no one is going to disagree that having that extra time in the classroom, because the first week, everybody's getting used to what's going on. Getting used to where things are and classes, and then it does give them more time to be prepared. But I do respect the feedback that was received from the parents, and I appreciate them taking the time to do the surveys. For our students, how do you disseminate the survey to
It's the same way. It's through social media and through the phone calls.
calls?
Yeah.
Would it be too much to maybe send them an email through their Outlook accounts, at least for this? I mean,
Underclassmen.
high school and even middle school.
I'd have to see if our system is set up to do that. I'm not sure if it is, but we could certainly expand how we do it in the future.
Thank you, everyone. You're off the hook for a little bit.
So as of right now, our intent at the business meeting is to vote on this, and current polling of the board is what? Option 2.
Yeah.
Temporary inconvenience, and then once it gets in the cycle.
Okay.
Thank you guys very much for allowing me up here for a little over 2 hours.
The Dr. Poole Show.
Trying to save you.
All right, moving on, we have item 3.03, School Resource Officer Program by Mr. Tim Mallory. You here? Oh, there you go. Hi,
Good evening.
good to see you.
He was up here for 2 hours. I sat for 2 hours. Good evening, everyone. School board chair, vice chair, school board members, and Dr. Birdsong. I'm here. I'm Tim Mallory, Director of Public Safety, for 13 more days.
Are you counting?
If I was in the military, I said 13 and I wake up. So, anyway, I'm going to talk about the School Resource Officer Program and its evaluation process. School Resource Officer Program began in 1999 and since has continued to be a valuable and positive resource for Norfolk Public Schools and the community. In accordance with the Memorandum of Understanding between the Norfolk Schools and the City of Norfolk, a semi-annual review of the School Resource Officer Program was conducted. There were 6 school resource officers assigned during the 2022-2023 school year. In each school where there was an SRO assigned, the principal participated in the evaluation process. The evaluations were shared with the SRO supervisor within the Norfolk Police Department. Some of the things we're going to cover is the overview of the evaluation process, review of the responses, and summary of public comments. Can you go back to the introduction page? It should be an introduction page. There we go. The School Board of the City of Norfolk, Virginia, and the City of Norfolk, Virginia, by and through its Chief of Police, entered into an agreement whereby the city shall provide school resource officers as the term is defined within 9.1-101 of the Code of Virginia. The SRO program operated at the 5 high schools in Madison Alternative Center. The purpose of the agreement is to establish a mutually beneficial framework that both schools and law enforcement can work within to achieve shared goals, to promote positive and supportive school climates, and create and maintain a safe and secure school environment. The data deemed to be relevant in evaluating the SRO program included the SRO MOU, Virginia Department of Education Annual Report for Discipline, Crime and Violence Report, Norfolk Public Schools Synergy Discipline Report, School Climate Survey, and the annual SRO Evaluation Instrument, which was developed in agreement between the board and city designees, and public comments. The SRO evaluation included 3 sections where officers were rated on their performance in specific areas, the impact of their presence within the school community, and qualitative comments from school principals. Responses to the evaluation questions were on a Likert scale with the following ratings: 1, strongly disagree; 2, disagree; 3, don't know; 4, agree; 5, strongly agree. Ratings of 4 and 5 indicate acceptable performance. Ratings of 1 to 3 indicate the need to examine practices and make adjustments to assure acceptable performance. In these charts, in the area of dependability, 82% of officers are punctual for school and scheduled events, while 97% of officers can be counted on to perform duties with little or no supervision. SROs are accessible to staff and students 83% of the time and respond to requests in a timely manner 98% of the time. 98% of the SROs present a professional appearance, and 83% of SROs are self-motivated and willing to take on new tasks. 83% of SROs demonstrate commitment to the school community. 98% of SROs are courteous and tactful. SROs foster an environment of safety and cooperation conducive to learning 88% of the time. They also require students and staff to use their last name and rank when interacting with them 82% of the time. "95% of the time, SROs communicate effectively, verbally, and in writing. They communicate effectively 93.3% of the time. SROs accurately assess situations 85% of the time. They take a proactive role when appropriate 85% of the time. SROs coordinate with school administration and school security officers to prevent and to minimize hazardous situations 86% of the time. 100% of the SROs are knowledgeable about state laws and local ordinances, while 84.6% of SROs are knowledgeable about school rules and discipline procedures. 100% of SROs are knowledgeable about the criminal justice system, and 85% of SROs are knowledgeable about school and community resources. 85% of SROs take appropriate action in regards to law enforcement. 85% of SROs act as liaison between the police command staff, school security officers, and the school administration. 85% act as visible, active law enforcement officers through the school building and on the entire campus. 100% of the SROs abide by school policies unless the policies conflict with existing laws or police department policies or procedure. 100% of SROs enforce city ordinances and state statutes by bringing violations before the appropriate court system. 100% of SRO coordinate with the appropriate police department, commanding officer, or designee, the school principal, and school security in managing a response to incidents or problems compromising the safety and security of students, staff, or the school building. 98% of SROs maintain a daily log of all actions taken during the workday. Semester reports and all significant school-related incidents are provided at the end of the year by 75% of the SROs. Vaping at 98.6% of SROs enforce policy. Assault, 98% of SROs enforce policy. Weapons, 98% of SROs enforce the policy. Sex offenses, 98% of SROs enforce the policy. Vandalism, 98%. Threats to do bodily harm, 98%. Gang-related, 98%. All ratings in the organization where 100% SROs have needed resources and support from both Norfolk schools and the Norfolk Police Department. Principals support having an SRO assigned to their schools and have been informed about the role of the SRO in the school. 70% of principals noted SROs have reduced bullying between students. 70% of principals rated SROs as having reduced the number of fights between students. Principals at the rate of 92% expressed that SROs have increased knowledge of what is and is not legal, and 100% of principals expressed that SROs had knowledge of the legal system. 95% of principals expressed that SROs have made it easier to maintain order in school. 83% of principals indicated that SRO's visibility in the school is adequate. 98% of principals expressed that SRO's availability to staff and students is adequate. 90% of principals rated SRO's involvement with students as adequate. 92% of principals expressed the SRO has reduced the fear of crime among teachers and staff. 92% of principals indicated the SRO has improved educator law enforcement collaboration. And due to personnel shortages, the chief of police for the Norfolk Police Department removed the SROs from the middle schools and from the K-8 and 3 through 8 school settings. The Norfolk Public Schools Administration is requesting that all SROs, as outlined in the MOU, be assigned to the schools and the MOU be followed as written. Here are just a few of the positive comments up here regarding the principals regarding the SRO program. Here there are public comments. As you can see, there were 122 total survey comments, where 105 comments approved the SRO program. Where we also see that there's an indication that the community would like to see the SRO program at the other levels within our school system. The partnership between Norfolk Public Schools and the City of Norfolk is to provide police officers in our secondary schools. Has proven to be a viable entity that supports the well-being and development of our students. The School Resource Officer Program began in 1999 and since has continued to be a valuable and positive resource for Norfolk Public Schools and the community. Since the pandemic, there has been an increase in community violence in Norfolk and across the nation. And during the 2022-23 school year, the Norfolk Police Department investigated 70 school threats. And due to personnel shortages, the police department, we did not have them in our middle schools. It's critical that we maintain a safe and secure learning environment for our students, teachers, and staff, especially the rise of community violence that often spills into our schools. As a division, we must take the necessary measures to ensure daily teaching and learning activities proceed uninterrupted so we can focus on student achievement. Any questions that you may have?
Go ahead, Mr. Clinton.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mallory, for the presentation. I did have two questions, and I think I heard it, one of them. As far as the agreement that we have with Norfolk Police Department and Norfolk Public Schools, which for years, like you said, since the early 90s, means that we have an SRO that's in every middle school and every high school. So for clarification, did we not have an SRO officer in every middle school?
No, we did not.
Did we have an SRO officer in every high school?
In all the high schools and Madison Alternative.
Okay. And so the agreement is with the Norfolk Public Schools and Norfolk Police Department. I know that other divisions are, and I know that it's nothing new regarding the shortage that we have within the police department. It's not that they don't want to support. There's a shortage, and you have to recruit and so forth there. Have we looked at the sister law enforcement, and I know that other school divisions have with the sheriff's department?
Absolutely. I've had that conversation with Sheriff Barron, and he also does not have enough personnel to provide us that support. But I would say that Norfolk Police Department have responded very quickly for everything related to school threats or incidents at schools, whether it's weekend, night, Sundays, been very supportive, and we've been able to reduce a lot of things just because of the work that they do.
Other questions?
Thank you for the presentation. do you have any information regarding the demographics or the schools represented in terms of who's completed the survey?
The survey itself was for the building principals. The principals that had an SRO assigned to their building. So just those principals participated in that survey.
But then,
I mean, the evaluation of the SROs.
right, well, I guess that's what. Because I know the community was also asked. Am I wrong about that?
Right.
Yeah, that's what I'm,
That's where the 122
Right.
people responded.
that's what I'm asking about. So that's
That
why I
one
was like,
had,
wait a minute.
We
I'm-
had the demographics of Spanish and English.
Oh, I missed that. Okay, sorry.
Years ago, we only had 20 people respond.
Right, these were, that was,
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mallory.
All right, thank you.
Appreciate the work that you've done for our district. So,
you.
enjoy your retirement. Okay, up next, we have our legislative priorities. I want to start by thanking Mr. Carlos Clanton and Ms. Tiffany Moore Buffalo for organizing our Take Your Legislator to School Day. I had a great experience. It was very well organized and very well thought out. I went to Norview Middle School. It's a very well-run school. Was even there during class changes, which was exciting. And also, we met with our delegation, our General Assembly delegation, and a couple of our city council members showed up as well. And it was just a really congenial environment. We even sat, we ate, we had lunch together, and several of us stayed afterward just to continue to talk about our legislative priorities and some other cool ideas as well. So I just want to thank you all for the work that you put into that. It was a very successful day, I believe.
If I may, before Mr. Jordan, I believe in giving credit where credit is due. Though, I guess you would say, for every good man, there's a strong woman behind him. Where every good school board member, there's an awesome administrative staff.
Right,
So
right,
Dr.
right. I was
Cole
about to say the
and,
same.
and folks who made that happen for us, because we set out what we wanted for vision, and you all
Right.
executed. And so we
Executed it.
appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone who was involved. So,
I'm sorry.
yes.
Like to move that we adopt the legislative priorities.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Good? All right.
Aye.
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 Aye. Okay. So our legislative priorities have passed, and I look forward to when we go to the General Assembly and meet with everyone, will be the next time we get to see our delegates. So, all right. Thank you, everyone. And up next, last but not least, we have the Maury High School PPEA. Hi, Ms. Spivey. How are you today?
Good evening, Chairman Martin, Vice Chairman Buffalo, and school board members, and Dr. Birdsong.
Yes.
You are. You can move those closer if you need to.
Thank you. Thank you. I have a PowerPoint presentation, and it's, the premise of the presentation is to talk about Maury High School construction, reconstruction, and not just, starting out with not just the PPEA, but the activities that have happened over the past 5 years, and with culminating in the discussion tonight, primarily related to the PPEA, but as the board had recommended, it's can't really talk about the PPEA without talking about the other activities that have been going on. So in 2018, HBA Architecture completed an educational specifications process to review the school's condition and use space for its academic programs. Between 2020 and 2022, HBA also conducted a feasibility study to create options for modernization or replacement. This process included multiple meetings to gather input from staff, students, families, and community. 3 of those meetings were, one of them was September 28th, 2022, held at Maury High School, October 12th, held at St. Helena Elementary School, and a virtual meeting held with the faith-based community on October 25th of 2022. On November 2nd of 2022, the school board, at the school board meeting, HBA presented a modernization versus replacement feasibility study that included 2 options for renovating the existing building and 2 options for building a new one. Recommendations included replacing Maury High School on the current site in a 3 or 4-story configuration. So that was the top poll getter of those who completed the survey, was the replacement, new school. Before the next steps could be accomplished, Heartland filed its unsolicited proposal regarding the Maury site. So at that point, we have 2 things going on at the same time. Their proposal came in on November 22nd of 2022. Continuing on with the HBA process, at the December 7th, 2022 school board meeting, HBA presented results of the community engagement meetings and recommendations, and the school board held a public hearing regarding the future state of Maury High School. So we had the HBA process, but in that time frame, we also got the PPAA unsolicited proposal. So to talk a little bit about that proposal, the conceptual model was the construction of a new Maury High School and adaptive reuse and rehabilitation of the existing Maury High School. The design builder is Heartland Construction. Architects were WPA and WMDO architects, and the adaptive use of the existing Maury High School structure would be done by the monument companies. There, within the unredacted portion, so the non-confidential portion of the PPEA, there was an original proposed construction schedule. Began with a notice to proceed, and what the proposal is to proceed with is building a new school where the current baseball field is. So the first thing that would need to happen with that proposal is to build a new baseball field. So that baseball field would go across Llewellyn on the Ghent school site. That would be done within the first year of the NPS and the city giving them a notice to proceed. Then the construction on the new high school could start. With this original proposal, the construction of the new school was estimated to be 28 months. So at that point, students would occupy the new high school, and the housing project and the proposed parking garage would begin construction. Again, this is the original proposal. There have been some modifications. Then in year 4, the parking garage would be ready to occupy, and the opening of the housing at the historic Maury High would happen in construction year 5. So in beginning this year, in January, The NPS administration hired the firm MBP to review the unsolicited offer, and we received recommendations of revisions. Based on the recommendations that the consultant had, the NPS administration requested that Heartland, they asked some questions of Heartland and requested some revisions. And in March, we received the response from Heartland addressing the issues were related to the pricing for parking and the natatorium. We received answers to those questions, and a working group was formed to review the proposal and make recommendations to the school board to review or to not review the unsolicited offer. In April of this year, the working group reviewed and discussed the unsolicited offer and recommended proceeding in accordance with the PPEA. So the next step then was, and according to state law and the school board's policy, was to advertise for additional proposals over a 90-day period of time, and school administration did that, so we advertised on the EVA platform, which is the state of Virginia's electronic marketplace for bidding solicitations. In the meantime, so at this point we've had two things going on. A third opportunity came up, in that the state of Virginia offered Norfolk Public Schools a $3 million grant. 30, yes, thank you. I mixed up with the other one. A $30 million grant. The restriction on the grant was that we would intend to obligate the awarded funds by December 21st of this year. That certification was required of the superintendent, which she did. So we still have that offer of the $30 million. So between June and September, the administration did solicit those competing proposals, and no competing proposals were received. After that 90-day period ended, the work group met and discussed the PPEA and had some concerns. The first was the concern that there were no competing proposals. Since there were no competing proposals, the working group was unable to determine whether the quoted pricing levels were of true market value. In addition to that, the working group had some concerns about the existing Maury High School structure being sold to the developer as soon as the building was vacant, rather than the city maintaining control and security of the building, which would be a vacant building at that point. And the group also had concerns about the way the parking structure was situated, and some additional things that are in the redacted part of the proposal that seem to have safety concerns. So based on the original proposal, the work group recommended rejecting the Heartland proposal and the PPEA, and instead to prepare and advertise two separate requests for proposals, one a design build for a new school, and the second a design build for major renovation of the existing Maury High School. These RFPs would not be done in accordance with the PPEA. They instead would be done with the competitive requirements of the Virginia Procurement Act, which is separate from the PPEA requirements. The superintendent supported the work group's recommendation, and in the interim, based on some questions and comments that the Heartland and their group had received, they submitted an amendment to their proposal, which addressed some of the concerns. So tonight, the primary discussion would be whether to accept or reject the Heartland proposal. We have a flow chart of what that would look like. If the board accepts the proposal, and right now we have the original, but we have to have the original with amendments now. The working group, starting in January, the working group could get together and begin to develop an interim contract with Heartland. So that's a lot of negotiations of having the interim contract. The school board would have the opportunity to get public input, on that contract, and then the school board would be asked to either to consider accepting the proposal to move forward. Accepting the interim contract and moving it on to the city, who would also have to accept the contract, or to reject it and send it back to the working group for whatever comment, whatever changes the school board would be interested in, and that cycle could continue until we have an interim contract that the board agrees to. At that point, it would go to the city. Same type situation, the city, either if they accept it, we could move on into that interim contract and get things started. If they reject it, then the PPEA process is over, if the city does not accept the interim contract. If the city does accept it, again, we would then consider, we would have the interim contract and consider a comprehensive contract that would go through the whole project. Again, the board, if the school board approves that, it would go to the city. If you don't approve it, it could go back to the group again and and see what changes needed to be made to it for the school board to approve it. And this all flows as expected. We're estimating that by October of next year, we could have a comprehensive contract, which would then begin the process of design and construction that would culminate in a school opening in August of 2029. That is, of course, those dates could change based on anything else that changes. So that's the pretty much the process if the board chooses to accept, and that's on the flow chart, the top two, the original proposal and versus the amended proposal, those steps are the same. If the school board decides to reject the proposal, there are these other options. If still interested in doing something with the Maury High School, we still have the four options to build that came out of the HBA process. So again, two of those were renovation, and two of those were new construction. Those, if we went that route, that would be done in accordance with the Virginia public procurement process, the competitive process. So not a PPEA. If the board chooses to go with the working group and the superintendent's recommendation, we would again go through the Virginia public procurement process, which is competitive bids, and go through the process. For this one, this process, the flow chart, shows a design-build process versus on the other two, it's a design, get the design, bid it, and then build it. So slightly different process. And then the last option is to not take any action. The result of that, if no action is taken in the next couple of weeks, we would possibly forfeit the state grant of $30 million. And with that, I'll take any questions that you may have.
Dr. Gabriel?
Okay.
Read the amendment, but
Let me pull out the schematics. And so as part of the amendment, which is not part of the confidential information, the natatorium is shown on the schematic, and it is included. Now, as we stated, the pricing, as you stated, the pricing for the parking garage and the natatorium were separate. So the expectation is that still the price isn't included, but the building of the facility is.
map here, that's what the expectation is. That we're not saying that, okay, you're gonna get, this, but that's actually not included. So I want to make sure that we're clear, because that was a difference between the two.
That is the way I read.
Okay. And that's how I understand too, because there's information here about the natatorium and the parking and whatnot. So I am thinking that it is encompassing the price tag that is kind of out there for right now.
That's what I think is not in, the price tag is not out there. They have given us a price.
Right.
But it's, the way I read it is that the price is still separate from the price that's quoted for the rest of the project. Unless anybody read it differently.
If you don't mind me asking you to verify that and maybe send us an email.
I didn't know if they. Okay. All right. We will verify that. I will verify that in an email.
Any other questions? Go ahead, Mr.
Question. I don't have a question, but I will say that in the amended, there was direct correlation where the elimination of the parking garage was noted, but the natatorium was included in the schematic with the other items that were there. So I would take it that that's a part of the proposal, and would also be a part of the next step, which would really, if we decide to move with this, would be part of the negotiations. And of all the different funding sources, particularly city side. But I don't want to jump over. If there aren't any other additional questions, I'd like to at least pose a question before the board of action. All right, so with that, I'd like to make a motion, Madam Chair. I move that the board elect to negotiate an interim agreement with the Heartland Construction Corporation pursuant to Heartland's amended unsolicited proposal concerning Maury High School filed under the Virginia Public-Private Education Facilities Infrastructure Act of 2002, PPEA, and at the board's PPEA guidelines policy DJFZ, such agreement be approved before execution by both the School Board of the City of Norfolk and the Council of the City of Norfolk.
Second.
Discussion? Go ahead, Dr. Gabriel.
I'm going to ask for grace from my board colleagues here because I'm going to take some time. Because this has been, I've been on the board for 11 years now, and this has been a topic of discussion, deep discussion every year. When I first came on the board, the concerns were safety and infrastructure, maintenance of the building, and the idea was always to build a new Maury High School, whether that be renovate or to build brand new. But there was always the need of something needs to be done. But there was never a funding source that could be tied to that desire to do so. And so a lot of the discussions were just discussions. They never had an endpoint to it. Today, we're at the endpoint, and I'm very proud that we are here because it's been a long time coming. And I want to say, I appreciate the City Council for pledging the funds for Maury and for the other schools that will come behind Maury, because we all know, as illustrated in our facilities program that we have, we are woefully behind on our school maintenance. We try our best with the funds that we get, but there is so much more that is needed. So when we think about building new buildings or renovating buildings, we have to not only think of what the upfront costs are, but what are the costs in order to maintain those buildings. So as I said before, this has been a conversation that has been ongoing, at least for me, for the last 11 years. I'm a lifelong Norfolk resident. I'm a graduate of Granby High School. I lived through the renovation of Granby, and I appreciate how Granby was preserved architecturally. And it brings joy to still see that same building as I, drive down Granby Street and to see that structure still there. And it's beautiful, absolutely beautiful. I say all of this to say that I never thought that I would be a parent of a Maury high school student, but here I am. And I'll probably be a parent of Maury students for the next 15 to 20 years. I have lots of nieces and nephews too. They might go to one of our other high schools as well. I'm not excluding that, but I have a lot of skin in the game when it comes to this decision, a lot. And I know how important this building, this land is for our community, for our entire city, because Maury is not just for those who live directly in the attendance zone. Maury has an incredible medical health sciences program that offers opportunity to students all across the city. And so this decision tonight is going to affect those students and the future students of Maury High School. And I take the decision incredibly seriously. So I've done a lot of work, reviewed all the documents that have been brought forth before us. I sit on the Facilities Committee, which we have ongoing discussions about maintenance costs and renovations and what that entails, not just for Maury, but for all of the schools. So I'm very much aware of the numbers behind the reports that we receive. I've visited Maury every year. I've been on the board, and I have physically toured the building. Mr. Clanton and I have gone together several times. We have been able to put our hands through walls because of deteriorating plaster. And we've seen the leaks and the trash cans, and we hear from the students, and the conditions, they deserve needed repair and attention now. We know that there is scaffolding holding up numerous parts of the building, including the stairs, the monumental stairs. So I have physically seen what needs to be done myself, and I'm 100% engaged. So it's not like I would be casting a decision without ever having stepped foot in the building or know the conditions. That being said, I've also taken a lot of time to listen to the teachers and the students that are physically in the building, and that came through those community conversations that you had mentioned in your PowerPoint. Meetings upon meetings upon meetings, before COVID, after COVID. And I want to thank all of the community members who did come out, some on short notice, some that rearranged family plans. I thank the teachers, the principal, all those who provided the feedback, because the feedback is very important. Listen to students, listen to the community members, civic leagues, the Preservation Society, all of the individuals. And I see some of our civic league members represented here tonight, so I appreciate that. Our objective tonight, and as we've had all of these discussions, is one item and one item only. We need to provide for our students. We need to provide for them the best educational opportunity possible for the next 100 years. Because we know that, with the exception of the state grant, the funding source for our buildings comes from our city and nowhere else. And so when we build buildings now or renovate them, we have to build them with sustainability. So we need our students to be in a 21st century learning environment. We need our buildings to be safe, secure, healthy, and we need them to be sustainable. The other aspect of what we're charged to do, it's not our mission, but it's an important detail because our students are actually occupying the building, and we will be in charge of either turning the key over or doing something with it. And that is, what do we do with a historical building? It's historical. It's iconic. It's a piece of art. And I don't disagree with any of the individuals who have come up and have spoken very passionately about how important that building's structure is architecturally, both from a historical standpoint and just from aesthetics. And so our other charge is, what do we do with this entity that we have on our hands? And so I have really taken a lot of time to figure out what the best solution is, because we're getting ready to take a vote right now. And I want the constituents and staff members and all to understand where Dr. Gabriel is coming from when she casts her vote. If I had my way, I wish that I wish we could keep the school a school. I wish we could renovate certain portions and still add on a newly renovated piece. But we have to compromise. That's the situation that we're in. We don't have unlimited funds, and we are trying to preserve old but still provide new to our students. My biggest concerns with the PPEA were exactly what was outlined with the superintendent and city's working group. The safety with regards to the parking garage, and really the loss of land for our students. The footprint, Maury High School sits on the smallest footprint of all of our high schools right now. And so if we do not do anything with the land that's there and keep it as a source of housing, then what do our students lose? What do we lose for our students? But I've been able to review thoroughly the amendment and do some further research. And I've come to the conclusion that this new building that is with the PPEA does not sacrifice any of the educational requests that were put forth in the educational specifications that the superintendent and the board engaged in early on in the process. So everything that we have outlined, classroom size, labs, workspace, all of that is still in the new building that is proposed with the PPEA. Additionally, athletics, which is very important to me. In fact, Maury High School is having their athletic award ceremony tonight right now, and their football team is going to the state tournament on Saturday. So I wish them very good luck on that. They have a lot of accolades when it comes to the athletics. And I'm not to say none of the other high schools don't, but tonight's the conversation is about Maury. The football field, the basketball field, the baseball field, the softball field are all going to be regulation size. So playable, competable for the entire city. The swimming pool, which I was very concerned about, is going to be in alignment also with the Virginia High School League competition swimming regulations. The soccer field is essentially going to be at regulation. We may not be able to have Olympic-style soccer games, but for the most part, high school students will be able to compete on it in a VHSL type of regulation. The tennis courts are going to be on the ground, which was a big point, and they will be close to bathrooms, which I'm telling you guys, when I did my homework, I went to the coaches, I went to the staff, what do you need in this building? What do we need in order to make it work? And it was a big deal for the tennis courts to be close to the bathrooms because of the breaks that the tennis players have. By the way, they are state champions in tennis as well. Track. We currently do not have a track at Maury. The only gorgeous track that we do have within the city is at Norview High School. It's wonderful, it's amazing. I've seen many track and field meets there. Well-maintained too, I would have to say. Kudos to our staff for all of their maintenance on that. It would be nice for the city to have 2 tracks, so our students and our community members can participate on that. That is not included right now. However, I have mentioned with board colleagues that the land space that is there, right adjacent to Maury High School, the land next to Llewellyn, there's a possibility, if we were being bold and innovative and thoughtful in our educational planning, that we could put a track there that would function to host meets and competitions. And why does Dr. Gabriel put so much emphasis on athletics? Because athletics, and we're thinking future here, guys. We're not thinking just today, we're thinking the future. When kids are involved in athletics, it is one of the best sources of mental well-being. Kids are occupied in the morning and in the evening by an adult who cares about them. They are participating in activities that bring about school engagement. There are so many parents that come out to see their child perform. And it brings in a sense of belonging. And so that's why I put a lot of emphasis on what this deal does have as far as the athletic component. But the mental health aspect of it is very important. And we know that when we talk about our students, we try to address the whole child. Physical, emotional, academic, all of that goes into account here. A couple of other things that I thought were really pluses for the PPEA were the solar panels. We have had a lot of discussion about what we can do right now with our schools and putting up solar panels, because renewable energy sustainability is very important. It is my understanding through the amendment that the solar panels will be put on and they will be maintained at no cost to Norfolk Public Schools. We will have to purchase the electricity, but the cost savings in the end could be substantial. So that is something that I really am excited about. I'm excited about the fact that through this proposal, we can still save an iconic building. It may not be used for our high school students, but at least they can still drive by and say, that was a building that I went to school at. This is a beautiful structure. And our community will have access to the auditorium, which is a big part of the feedback that we received. If you've never sat in Maury's auditorium, I invite you to come to one of their mini concerts, perhaps, if that is allowed. albeit one tomorrow for strings. It's a beautiful auditorium, and just like how our city redid the Harrison Opera House, when you go into that portion of the building, all five senses are engaged, okay? And I'll say that this proposal allows for the communities to still have access to that portion of the building. So, I looked at the qualifications also of what the PPEA has. I looked at both the architects, the builders, the design builders. I have been impressed with VDMO ever since I started going to various school board conferences. We would have breakout sessions where we could go and tour, and I always found myself attracted to the architects at VDMO. They did some really fantastic school renovations and brand-new buildings. They fall in alignment with all of the Virginia Department of Education rules and regulations. They're innovative in their thinking, and I've just been very impressed. One of the schools in their portfolio happened to be the John Hanley High School, which was renovated. So I think that with them on board, they will still have a historical lens by which to build the new building, to try to preserve some of those historical aspects of it, because we still want it to fit with the theme of, where Maury is in the neighborhood. So I think that's a plus. Our intention, my intention, at least when I cast my vote, is to do right by our students, our current students, and our future students, and to do right by the staff who are well overdue for a brand-new building, where they can feel like they can access the internet and other mobile devices without it cutting off, and to be prepared to do whatever we need to do for 21st century learning. I know that we don't have an unlimited budget. And with that, we have to be very mindful of the funds that we obligate our city to, because right after Maury, we have other conversations about other buildings that need to be in construction. So those are the thoughts that I have with regard to the PPEA and why I think that we definitely have a lot of benefits if we were to engage in this process. And it's a process that will require a lot of engagement on the side of the board and the city council. And I am prepared to be right there with the discussions to make sure that we are ensuring that our kids and our staff have everything they need in order to succeed and be to their full potential academically for the next 100 years.
Very much.
Thank you for allowing me that time.
That
I
was-
just had to say all of it.
I'd just like to say that my tenure on the board parallels Dr. Gabriel's. During that time, I think I've attended every school graduation over that period of time. And one thing that was always unique at the Maury graduation, that either the valedictorian or salutatorian or the president of the class, one of the students was going to mention the conditions of the building. And so I'm supportive of this proposal. I think it gives us a twofer in terms of being respectful of the historical architecture and the saving the building, while at the same time, hopefully going forward, have valedictorian and other speeches that include remarks about how great the school is and the learning environment and all that's available during their time at the school. So, thank you.
Quickly, concur with everything that my colleagues have said there. As the proud Maury alum in the room, the current Maury High School doesn't look like it did when I walked in the doors in the early 1990s and walked out in 1998. My nephew graduated from Maury last year, and one of the things he would talk about all the times was the conditions. Some days it's cold, some days it's hot, smelling all these different things here. And I agree with the perspective protecting the historical components in our community. We've torn down way too many things, but that's not what we've got to be focused on. As a board, we have to focus on making sure that we create a safe learning environment for our teachers and our students to go in each and every day. And I agree with you, Mr. Jordan, in respect that this proposal gives us a twofer. We can get a new structure that allows us to be able to provide that, based around the educational component of what we want to put within that building, and allows the city and others to do what they need to do with the current structure there, where people can still see it and it has a new life. But we need to focus on putting those resources back into the educational component and supporting that. And so that's why I'm supporting this. I'm eagerly supporting this because it's time to move forward with action and to demonstrate to our community and to those within our school division as a board. Like you said, we've got many more things that we've got to do. This is a whole component. We've got Jaycox, we've got Norview Elementary,
Elementary.
And then we've got a whole division that we've got to talk about. So this just becomes the first linchpin, and let's keep this domino effect moving in the right direction.
Well, I'm not going to belabor the discussion, but I do want to commend Dr. Gabriel for her, well, I was about to say succinctly, but maybe that is definitely
It was thorough. Thank you. I
not the
appreciate
right
that.
adjective, but perhaps thoroughly reviewing all the benefits that are proposed in this proposal. And I, concur as well, weighing all the pros and cons and just, at the forefront of the decision is our students, and making sure that they have the best learning environment and that our teachers have the healthiest and most innovative teaching and work environment. So with that, I too will be supporting this proposal. So,
Ready for a vote?
Go ahead. I don't think I can be as eloquent as Dr. Gabriel was. I think we could probably fairly call it succinct, considering the amount of information there was, believe it or not. But I wish the first thing they gave me was a calendar. But y'all gave me Maury to start out with, and I do not thank you for that at all. This was very difficult for me, and I will probably think about this vote for the rest of my life, and wondering if I reviewed everything as thoroughly as I possibly could. So I appreciate everyone's input and all the help that everyone's given me, and all the information that's been presented to me. I've reviewed it as best as I could. And I have gone back and forth so many times. We had two amazing ideas ahead of us, and when I looked over these, in the initial surveys, everyone was saying we need a new building. That was the one that came to the forefront in those surveys. When I look at what the students and the teachers are saying that are in the buildings, they're saying that we need a new building. As much as we love this building, we need a new building. And that meant something to me, and that helped my decision. But at the same time, my undergrad and my master's, it was William and Mary. One of the most special things to me was the fact that I was a religious studies major, which meant all of my classes were held in the Wren building. So I sat in classrooms where actual presidents took classes. And that was something very special to me, and I always felt very, very honored to have that opportunity presented, and that's not something that would have been presented had that building not been preserved the way it has been. And that's something that William and Mary maintains is its history, and that's something very rich and special about it. And so looking at this, it makes me very sad having to make a decision like this. And so I echo the things that my colleagues have said, that it preserves a building in a way that is meaningful, but it still makes me sad that it will not be doing what it was built to do. I also have the same space concerns for athletics, but at the end of the day, when I look at our neighbor cities, other cities in our state, and the new buildings that they are constructing, our students do have they should have a space that supports 21st century learning. They should have athletic facilities that
are something to be proud of. That's something that you get to hold on to. I still have my Letterman jacket. There were definitely times that I went to school when I wished I hadn't, just so I could go to field hockey practice. Like, these are things that keep us in school and keep us engaged. And so I hope in our discussions moving forward, those will be big things we discuss to make sure that those facilities are what our students need and deserve. But there was a lot, and while I am in support of the proposal, it makes me very sad, because I think, just like Dr. Gabriel, if I had my way, it would be renovating this building to be as new and as perfect as possible, but this at least gets to what we need and what people have told us that they need, and compromises to some degree, because I think all the decisions before us, there was something that got lost. And there wasn't any way to preserve every single concern, and I appreciate this at least gets as many as we can. Though, like I said, it makes me very sad. But I'm glad that we have as much information as we do, and I appreciate the volumes that I was presented, so I could be as informed about this as possible, and I appreciate all the work that the board and the city and
Aye.
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 Aye. So the motion passes. Thank you, everyone. And with that, we will adjourn the meeting.
Thank you.